We are live on a Thursday evening and welcome all the truth proofers to the live stream tonight. And welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Les. And another Thursday soon come round, hasn't it? But
it sure does.
We put that little sly one in earlier in the week because we didn't have a short. So I hope you enjoyed that. So, yeah, absolutely brilliant. Great guest tonight. And I need to say right from the get-go, he's got a conference to get to. So we've only got Ron for an hour tonight. So we're going to jump into it a little bit quicker than we normally do. But
yeah, and if you want to do a couple of name checks, we won't go through everybody tonight because of as you say, we've only got a short time with Ron. So
and just before we pull Ron on, we will fill last hour in, and Les will probably have a few questions that he wants to ask. Get some questions in capital letters, please, for Ron at 7:30ish, and for us after 8 o'clock. So we've got Mark McClinchley, Tom Watters, Declan Walsh, Kim King, Peter Leach, Blue Shift, Dragonborn, Mike the Disabled Welshman, let's have a look, Sober Carper, Danny M2, or 2ME, sorry, Dragonborn. Yeah, we've got Andrew Shearham. I saw Yorkshire there. I can't see it now. But let's Zeno. And let's have a look. There's 89 in chat, and I probably said 15, 20 names, and we're going to jump into it. Big Bird, Algie, Simon Burton. Let's go for it.
Alison will be doing the moderating when she comes online very, very shortly. But in the meantime, we'll bring our guest on for tonight, Paul. Welcome, Ron.
How are you doing, Ron?
Hello. It's a pleasure to be here, and actually an honor to be here as well, too. Mr. Sinclair, I've been following your meteoric career here for a while, and I've always been impressed by you, my friend.
Well, thank you. And I know for a fact, but we'll get to Ron Murphy in a moment, that I spoke on Inside the Goblin Universe years and years ago, and that were your show, essentially. So you helped with that journey along the way. But tonight, tables turned, and we're talking to Ronald Murphy, researcher of all things unexplained. Over 30 years researching the unexplained, and probably prior to that, a vast interest in it, from ghosts to cryptids and everything in between. So, yeah, welcome. And over this next hour, let's just share some views. But before we jump into it, Ron, is this from childhood, or was there a particular event that sort of kickstarted your journey?
Oh, no, it's definitely from childhood. And let me just give a real quick shout out to Brian Bowden, who was my co-host there on Inside the Goblin Universe too. We can't let him out because I'm still a very close personal friend with him as well too. But yeah, so we're getting back to where this all kind of came from, the genesis of why I got into the paranormal. I have to say that it's definitely from my mother. My mother had always had a curiosity about things that go bump in the night. And one of the ways that we bonded as a mother and child is that we would go out into the woods and we would look for Bigfoot, and we would look for tracks. And, at night we would go outside looking to see if we could see any strange lights or anything. So from a very early age, I was brought up with the idea that there was more things out there than we realized. And that led me down so many rabbit holes. It led me to go to the library, look up books, and read voraciously on the subject. And growing up in the 1970s, it was a fantastic time because we had programs on all the time, like, That's Incredible, In Search Of, all these great shows that would feature monsters and UFOs and everything. So as a child, I couldn't have asked for a better upbringing. It was kind of like a Norman Rockwell painting with a little bit of the night gallery thrown in there as well, too. So it was an interesting upbringing, but, it was full of love, and it was full of wonder and enchantment and excitement.
That's amazing. And like you said, a great upbringing, especially being in the outdoors and everything that you shared with your mum. Did your mum have a sighting? Because she's obviously got an avid interest, because if she's taking you out looking for prints and looking for evidence.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that she's ever had a sighting or anything like that. I come from an Irish Catholic family that was always had superstitions attached. And I think that's just the way it went back in that particular time, it was just the perfect storm, I think. This was also the time in Western Pennsylvania whenever there was a rash of UFO sightings and a multitude of Bigfoot sightings. And this was just like, like everything was coming together. And I lived in a very small town in Western Pennsylvania that had about 2 streetlights. Like nothing happened in that town. And then back in 1977, there were starting to become a Bigfoot sightings right on the outskirts of my town, to the point that the local news station outside of Pittsburgh actually came to my town to show footage because there was so many reports. So that really sparked my interest as well too, because Bigfoot then as a kid became almost like this the sexy rock star, where he needed media, right? And, the paparazzi was on him. So besides being something that was, I was afraid of, because who isn't afraid of a hulking monster that prowls about in the shadows? But there was also this bit of a uniqueness that brought out, I guess, a little bit of celebrity as well, too, in him. He was definitely a celebrity, and he was treated that way as well. And I'm lucky, the conference that I'm going to tonight, it's tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday and Sunday as well. It's in the very town where I started to do my investigations, right along the Chestnut Ridge. So it's come full circle, and I'm very honored to have this opportunity to be on your show right now, because, whenever I go to that conference tonight, it will be, going back to my childhood roots where I started this stuff, all those years ago. So actually, and again, whenever we talk about Bigfoot or other things I've written about, vampires and werewolves and everything, I'm naturally frightened by these things. I think that we all are. We might be drawn to them, but I think there's a bit of frightening aspect as well. And whenever I write about these things, I'm hoping to exorcise some of the demons that are associated with these archetypes, really. And I think the closer you get to the truth of what these things are, the more, almost more of a conundrum that you get, because it doesn't make any sense. Whenever you hold up the magnifying glass or you put them underneath the microscope, it makes even less sense than at face value. Yep.
Have you found then, the more you're looking into it, you've just said it, the less you actually know about it, because it's always throwing curveballs. But why the 1970s? Have you thought about that? Why did it explode in the 70s? Was it there in the 60s, but just not talked about? And 50s and 40s?
I think there was a proliferation of media. I think that was a big thing. In the United States, we've had TV around since, the 1950s, to the point that it was in everybody's home. So by the 1970s, in order to find broadcasting and everything, you were always looking for a hook. And I think that back in the 1970s was whenever the paranormal started to actually make impact. People could now talk about Bigfoot because you were only talking about less than a decade since the Patterson Gimlin film. And I think that people were just much more open to the subject.
Yeah. Did you or do you note in your research then, Ron, a connection between UFO sightings and sightings of cryptid Bigfoot?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. So in Western Pennsylvania here, this is a unique place in the United States because oftentimes Bigfoot are seen either in conjunction with a UFO sighting or shortly before or after, but sometimes it's during the exact same time. And oftentimes they've been described as walking around with like a glowing orb in their hands, like things that are completely out of the ordinary. So as a researcher, I'm lucky because I don't see these things as red herrings that you have to throw out. I see these as part of the puzzle. And whenever we put that puzzle together, like I said, it makes an image, but the image is still not clear. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up as well, too, I try to look at things through a very scientific lens, because if we're ever going to be scrutinized by the community, that community will indeed be the scientific community. But I'm not sure if we can just use science as a way to attempt to explain these things away, because it seems as if these things reside in a different physical world. Like there's different physics with these things. They might be within our world, but to me, it seems that they exist in another dimension, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So yeah, I would agree. And when we talk about science, and obviously I've got no great in-depth knowledge of science, but there's no conditions with which anybody, or tools with which anybody within the scientific community, other than anecdotal evidence that we're giving and witnesses are giving, that can measure these things, because the environments that these things are seen in are not scientific, sterile locations. So the theories and the things that are formulated to explain these things, to me, it falls flat on its backside. I mean, you'd have to be there in the moment to try and, I don't know, do any type of analysis on what people are seeing and experiencing. Go on, sorry.
Yep, I agree completely. So a lot of people try to be very scientific whenever it comes to ghost hunting, right? They have all the gadgets and the lights and all those meters and everything. But whenever it comes right down to it, anytime you have an experience, it's very subjective, isn't it? It means something completely personal to you. And there might be another person there with you that doesn't experience anything, or gets a different feeling as well, too. So really, I see this whole thing as, very personal, almost pseudo-religious in a way as well. Or let's say pseudo-spiritual in a way. And I think that we in the 21st century really want to move away from that idea of spirituality. But whenever you look at Bigfoot in its environment, right, in its history, whether you're talking about the Yeti or you're talking about the Sasquatch or what have you, in nearly all indigenous cultures in which this being appears, it has always seemed to be that entity that straddles two different worlds, right? We forget that the Native Americans and the First Nation people in Canada often saw these creatures as spiritual, as taking the place almost of a shaman, as if they are delivering message to us from the other side. And sometimes they're even represented as a psychopompus. These are creatures that come to you to actually convey your soul into the other world. So in order to put our finger down on these things, we have to first of all decide what we're looking for. It's very cool to go out and bang on trees and do whoops and look for footprints and everything. That's all great. But I think it's far more interesting to try to figure out what these creatures meant within the environment in which they were first introduced to us. Because we as colonists like to throw away all the stuff that we see as either heathen or disrespectful to organized religion or whatever. And then what we're left with is, a bipedal, hair-covered, man-like beast. But what we're throwing out is all those things when we talk about the spirituality in nature. Yeah. And like I said, even in Tibet, these things are almost deified in certain philosophies. So I try to take that all into account as well, too, because they are ancient. All these things that we're talking about is ancient. And whenever I dig deeper down and you peel off this onion layer by layer, what I really get to at the very beginning is almost an elemental facet of all these things that we're talking about, Bigfoot, UFOs, and everything. And that's really where my research is going right at this time.
Yeah, and I'm not just saying it to agree with you. I think I'm on a very similar page, and it's all the attributes that these things have got that take them way above a normal flesh and blood mammal. When the witness descriptions, of which you'll have taken loads, and the in some instances the glowing red eyes, in some instances the movement that looks like they're almost gliding, and then you've got witnesses who'll say that these things will go past a tree, and they're that big, and they'll go past a tree, and then they just never appear at the other side of it. How does that work? So the witnesses are either lying, in which case we've got an absolute multitude of witnesses saying that very similar things, or these creatures do have these attributes which take them way above a normal flesh, bone, and blood mammal. So I think you're on the same page. And so what came first, in your opinion, the orb or the Bigfoot? Do you just think it's just a byproduct of them being in our sphere of existence? I'm not asking for an answer because I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, it's interesting because I just completed a book that's going to be published by Small Town Monsters called Lights from the Mist, which is a book about my experiences with what you would call earth lights or spook lights or fairy lights or what have you. Because I was on an expedition with some pretty good researchers, and we were doing all the wood knocking and the howls and everything like that because we were being filmed for an episode of Small Town Monsters. And suddenly we start hearing something that sounds like wind chimes. Now there's a frequency and a vibration out in the woods that I've never experienced before. And then before long, these lights start appearing to the point that we thought that they were people, until the lights started to walk up an imaginary staircase and go up into the treetops, So what we had happen during this one investigation, while we were out looking for Bigfoot, we had an encounter with lights that seemingly were intelligent, that were coming around and scrutinizing who we are and what we were doing there. And they were moving in and out. And like I said, it was almost an observation. And some of them ranged to the size of, the size of a golf ball, the whole way up to a basketball. And I do believe that these lights have an intelligence to them. And not only that, but if they are working on frequency and they are working on vibration and they're working on this kind of electricity, if you will, is it possible then they can influence the electricity within our mind to allow us to see something that's not there? The idea of Bigfoot and Dogman, all these other different cryptids. People are claiming to see these things, and these are lucid people, and I'm believing what they're saying. But if we would have all these type of apex predators in one localized area, you would go in there and you'd start tripping over them, right? Because they have to find food and shelter, and they have to make babies. So there would be a lot of these things going on. So it's really coming to my understanding, at least me personally, that we're dealing with something that can only be described as an encounter with the fairy realm.
Do you know, you're absolutely on the money, I think. I spoke at the Awakening earlier this year, and the talk that I give, it's on YouTube. I don't know which channel it's on. I really don't. But I was saying, if these unknown others, for want of a better word, can talk into our minds, we can audibly hear these beings, be it aliens, be it clairvoyance, be it, clairaudience, be it the Sasquatch, then that ability is just incredible. So what you've just said is basically what I said at the conference. What is to say that they can't make us see things that aren't actually there, like almost like an hallucination? So it's great, because you're the first person I've heard say that, to be honest with you, Ron. And,
Rene Descartes, he had this theory about the theater of the mind, that the mind, people talk about the mind playing tricks on you, but really your mind is your reality. If you would study people that happen to be schizophrenic or whatever, they see things in their world that simply are not within our world, and they have a different reality than ours. So what is the possibility that the same types of energies and the same type of areas within our brain cannot be manipulated by some sort of outside force, that we see things that we all would swear is corporeal, that they're right there in front of us, but they actually are not. So when we think about these things, that's a great way to be territorial without confrontational, right?
Yeah.
If these are indeed just, products of the earth itself, a manifestation of the very intelligence that's inherent within the land itself, then this would be a great way to stay hidden or to stay secretive or whatever. And you go back to the idea of fairies. And
just hold that, because I know we're going to do the fairies. I just want to. Could the fae be responsible for everything? Is one of my questions.
There you go.
So I want you to go with that. Yeah.
So if you and I were together back in, say we go back 300 years and we're going through some sort of heath in Yorkshire or whatever, we would start talking about the idea of glamour, right? Something that we talk about nowadays in the realm of women's cosmetics, the idea of making yourself appear differently than you are. But at one time, that was part of the idea of fairies, that they are able to assume other forms and take other shapes. So the idea of shape shifting and all this other kind of stuff is really quite ancient whenever you look deep into the idea of the fae.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think that, people are looking to the stars with things. postulating about where these things, these other beings might come from. And it could be earthbound. It could actually be earthreal and be here or could have been here alongside of us all of the time. And as you're suggesting now, or semi-suggesting, that the Fae, with the aid of shape-shifting and influencing our mind to see other things, could be responsible for a lot of what people are seeing and experiencing.
No, absolutely. And I think when we look around the world, when we look at like the Menehune in Hawaii, or we look at certain type of Celtic references as well too, these creatures were often seen as almost divine. So when we talk about the Tuatha from Ireland, they were, there's a belief that these are like the formative idea of where fairies came from. It's very possible that what we think of as aliens and different types of gods, whenever you look at the Greek and Roman pantheon, it may have indeed had its origins in our interaction with the world of the Fae. Yeah. Because a lot of times they're the givers of culture, right? When you think about, Prometheus is the giver of fire, and you think about like Australia, or even in Hindu religion, these fire beings known as the prana that came and really put the divine spark within us. I think that whenever we were, hunter-gatherers, of course, we were part of that synchronicity that was in the world. We were part of that universal vibration, that universal, heartbeat. And then we have stepped out of that heartbeat. Now, that's not to say that the things aren't still there, because I do believe completely that they are still there. But I think that every now and then we can go back and step into that frequency. And whenever we have that kind of electrical circuitry going, then we see the things that are always out there. But I do believe that we as human beings, if you look at the idea of Jungian philosophy and psychology, the idea of a collective unconscious, I think that we as human beings have always been aware that the world around us is filled with so many things that we simply cannot describe. Sometimes they lead to fear. Sometimes they lead to, sheer enjoyment. It's given the different kind of context in which these things are experienced. But I do believe what we call the wild man and all these archetypes that we talk about do derive from our time when we were sharing this world with things that we have forgotten about.
That's fabulous, honestly, and I hope people are enjoying this as much as I am. Seriously, it's absolutely a breath of fresh air for me. This, have you any particular accounts that or one or two that you'd like to share for 5 or 10 minutes before we ask for questions? What people have shared with you?
Yeah, so we'll do one historical one, okay, and then we'll do a personal one. So one of my favorite historical, encounters, 1692, the same time that the Salem witch trials are going on over here in New England, you have Robert Kirk up in Stirling, Scotland, right? And he wrote The Commonwealth of the Fairies, and he was a minister, and he described walking home one evening, and on the side of a hill, a door opens up and a light shines through. Now, in the 21st century, we see that happening, definitely UFO, because we're technologically advanced people. But to him, that was an opening up into the other world. It was very natural. It was as if the earth itself was opening up. And he looks on in, and inside he sees different human-like forms. And one of the forms is a very beautiful type of humanoid, which we would call the Nordics, right? So he's having what we would call an extraterrestrial experience. But to him, it was nothing more than interaction with the world of the Fae. Now, to connect the dots even more, when we talked about Whitley Strieber, whenever he talked about his abductions, he said that the creatures had a very cinnamon smell to them. And even the spacecraft itself had a natural earthy smell to it. So is it possible that all these things that we are calling alien abductions are all stemming from this world of the Fae? The idea of them coming into our world and abducting children, that is something that is part of the trope whenever we talk about fairies. The idea of the changeling, and now people talking about hybrids and everything, but people who have been enamored by the fairy world have been talking about these things for, hundreds, if not thousands of years. And then one other incident that happened to me, and this is a very difficult thing to kind of explain away, but it was several years ago, and I do have photographic documentation of this. There was the school was canceled because we had a snowstorm. So I opened up the door. It was about 7 o'clock in the morning. This breast of freshly fallen snow all around, and nobody else had been out. And then I noticed that in my yard there are these tracks. They're very small, under the size of $1, so probably about 4 inches long, and they were barefoot. And it looked for all the world as if it was a Sasquatch footprint, but it was just in super miniature, right? And what had happened was, my home was surrounded by woods, so I assumed that these tracks came out of the woods. And as I followed them, I noticed that they came out of nowhere. And they didn't come out of nowhere at the same time. It was a right track, and then another right track, and then a left and right track. So as if something stepped off of something, or it took a while to materialize into something physical, whatever the case may be, whatever left the tracks was not completely formed, for lack of better terms, until it took a few steps and came into some sort of, physicality, some sort of form. But what was interesting about these tracks is they were at my house. They came to my window and looked in my bottom window, and then went over the hill towards the woods again. They vanished again. So what was so unnerving about this is that, I'm an investigator, right? I look for these kind of things. These things shouldn't happen. But it's odd that whatever was out there obviously knew who I was. And it was as if they were investigating me. And maybe there was a bit of a gift, or maybe a bit of a revelation as well, too, because it really changed my way that I look at things. Because whenever I go out into the woods, I'm looking for something. But wouldn't it be odd that when we go out in the woods, something is also looking for us?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think at times it is looking for us, but maybe it takes a different type of emotional state for it to connect with us. And maybe, I don't know, maybe you've seen those tracks put your mindset into a different mode and set you off on the paths. Because when did you, I'm not saying you did jump from the Bigfoot, hominid that's wandering around the woodland, but when did you make that transition that it might be something different, or has it always been there?
Oh, no. At first, I was always, flesh and blood camp. This was an unidentified ape that was prowling around North America. And it wasn't until I was, really into my adulthood, after I was already in graduate school, whenever I started to look and say, these things don't make sense. Whenever you really dig deeper, like, for instance, the Ape Canyon incident that happened in California, which is one of those most famous incidents where these miners were being attacked by a group of what they would have called, Sasquatch. But whenever you look into the eyewitness accounts, the people were describing them more closely to demons, and they didn't really have a physical form. There's always more out there, but we don't like to read about that kind of stuff because it makes us uncomfortable. So most all the journalism that is covered about Bigfoot is always, the big lumbering ape, because that sells things. Now, whenever you talk about things materializing and dematerializing and all this kind of stuff, that's whatever becomes a little bit harder to believe. But I don't think that the people that have these kind of experiences should be marginalized. I think that these kind of experiences happen more often than not, and they really need to be brought out. People shouldn't be afraid to talk about this stuff anymore. We have forums like your show, and we have other good shows out there, other good podcasts as well too, where people can come on and relate their events that have happened to them. And until we hear all these stories, we're never going to quite get to the truth. But it's also my belief that no matter how much we study this, we probably will never get essentially to the truth anyways.
I would agree with. I sound like I'm agreeing with everything you say, but I would agree, because it seems like, just when we think we've got a little bit of a grip on it, it throws another curveball and it sends you down another dark passage. That's what it does.
Right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, fine. Fire away.
Well, what I say whenever I do conferences, whenever I give a talk, I think these things are embroidered into our DNA, right? I think that we've always been around, but there's also something about these things, Paul, and it's that they make us more human. And I'll tell you, because we think that we know everything there is to know about this world, we've brought great species to extinction, right? We have really enabled ourselves to domesticate most of the world around us. But there are still these things that hide from us, that lurk in the shadows that we cannot control. And that puts us into our place. So all this human hubris that we have is now kind of taken down a step or two to show us that we are not the end all and be all of things in the universe.
Yeah, it shows our vulnerabilities, doesn't it? You know, absolutely. You know, we're just coming up to 30 minutes, and I know we've only got 30 minutes left with you, Ron. So I'm going to ask Les if there's any questions, if that's okay.
Oh, sure. I love questions.
Excellent. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you love the questions, Ronald, because we do have some in for you tonight. We'll start with, I don't know if you can see anything on the screen, but we'll read them out also. David Barker is asking, what's the most convincing footage / account you've ever heard or seen?
Wow. Well, I will tell you. So you can go to YouTube. You know, YouTube is becoming a great resource for people because you can see things on there that are, you know, free. So the incident that I had with the earth lights that I talked about, the idea of the wind chimes and everything, if you go to Small Town Monsters, and it was a series called Sasquatch Uncovered the Ridge, and it's episode 2 called Spectral Bigfoot. You could actually see in real time what was going on in the woods that evening. So you can see the lights, you can hear the sounds. And then I urge anybody to watch it and try to make up or try to come to some sort of conclusion of your own. Now, of course, you know, we were in the woods and we were very intimate with what was going on, and we weren't watching from our sofa. But I do encourage people to watch this because this was footage that was actually captured, unaltered in any way, and really was a cool documentation of what we experienced that night that led me to write the book that I did about the earth lights.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Dave. Zeno, Ron, the fact that nobody has ever seen a baby Sasquatch or any deviation of its or give me a word I can't pronounce. Is it possible? Yeah, that is not an organic entity, but a psycho-holographic program which doesn't age or think.
Right. Well, I think that's what Paul and I were talking about. Now, the idea of thinking, I think that, at least in my experiences, that we are dealing with something that's highly intelligent. And so I think there is a sentience there. So I don't think that these are just holograms. I think that there might be a projection into the mind, but the idea of the source of that projection is definitely highly intelligent. I will tell you, however, here in the United States, we do have a few cases where Bigfoot was sighted with a baby. There was one photograph where it looked like there was one riding on the back of an adult, and it took it off its shoulder and then took it to its front. Here in my neck of the woods back in the mid 1800s, there was a sighting of a female Sasquatch washing its child in a stream, but absolutely few and far between. So what we have to make of this is that these creatures either are, you know, interdimensional and they exist in a physical form in another realm, and they come here and can assume a physical form as well, or there's no physicality to them whatsoever. Now, I do go down the hall a little bit and suggest there is physicality, because I think they do leave behind tracks. I think that they can vocalize. I think that they have left behind hair samples and things like that. But I don't think that this is their world, or at least not our reality is their world all the time. I think that what we're dealing with is a multitude of things that this gentleman had just written here was the question he was asking. But people have seen baby Sasquatches. It's just not one of those things that's very well publicized.
Yeah, complicated question, that one. I'm glad he asked you and not me.
I think that you would probably say the same thing too, Paul. I would think that you would think, because I think at the end of the day, what we were dealing with, whether we're talking about interdimensionality or ultra-terrestrials or whatever, we are indeed talking about an intelligence, right? Yeah. That's I think the whole crux of everything. Whether we're talking about an intelligence that We talk about this world being a simulation and everything. I think we're going too deep down a government conspiracy thing here. But the idea that maybe some things in this world isn't truly as it seems, there might be forces working to make our world a little bit different than it actually is. So I think that we're at the end of the day, we always are going to be talking about an intelligence.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, I've just got a question. Yeah, I've got a question from myself, actually, Ron. And the question is, you talked about energies and vibrational things like that. What effect do you think, and I don't know the answer to this, what do you think the present use of the Wi-Fi, 4G and 5G has, this microwave energy, on our perception or activity of the phenomena? Has the phenomena in sightings increased because we've had all this energy beams around us, or is it just the same or decreased?
You know what? That was a great question that I never even thought about, because whenever I research ghosts, a lot of times that I would say that certain areas, whether it be a haunted house or a particular area, I would say it almost acts like a paranormal hotspot. Like that's where everything comes together. So, and I'm also big on the idea of ley lines as well, too, natural grids within the earth, and there's more energy on certain nodes than other ones. But I never really brought that into consideration when we talk about the proliferation of man-made signals out there. And that is really something to look at. I know that when I do in ghost investigations, one of the first things that I do is turn off the main power source of the house, so there's no kind of still electricity running in there. But that's absolutely astute of you to even bring that up, and that's something that's worthy of discussion.
Great question, Les.
Yeah, we're keeping that. I'm telling you. Right, I'm just warning you, Ronald. We're keeping that for a book.
Hopefully one day, I did get a chance to study in the UK for a while. I went up to Stirling, got to see the areas where Kirk was and everything like that. But I hopefully one day our paths cross and we can do a proper fairy investigation over there.
No, that would be fabulous. And we can take you up on that one.
Just a general observation from Big Bear. I think sites of the paranormal is maybe dependent on how open we are to these energies.
I think so.
Ron.
Yeah, isn't it something that people that go out in the woods, loaded for elephant, if you will, with guns and everything like that, very rarely see anything. But it's like the woman out there who's taking a walk with her child, or somebody that nonchalantly is picking blueberries or whatever. I think there is something to be said about that. I think that whenever you are in tune with the world, it's almost like a tuning fork. This is not completely out there or anything, all new agey and everything, because whenever you look like chakras and alignments and things like that, it's often based upon frequency. And whenever you go out there, and if you can get that tuning fork just right, then I think that does open you up to things that are usually invisible.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ron. And kind of a follow-on question from Debbie Shaw. Would Ronald agree that it's key to understanding and connecting with all the phenomena is consciousness?
Oh yes, so let's look. I'm still a practicing Catholic, so I still have spirituality with me. It's not like I'm just completely like some sort of Vulcan. It's all about science and everything. I believe that there's a lot out there, and consciousness is really the key. So whenever you look at the idea of like Gnosticism, or even whenever you look at the Gospel of John in its original Greek, we have the idea of the logos, right? We have the idea of this universal knowledge, this universal consciousness, this intelligence. And most all world religions are trying to access that intelligence, right? They're trying to get there, and it's just out of our reach. But if you look at the brain patterns of whether it's a Catholic nun or whether it's a Hindu or a Muslim, whenever you look at their brains under an analyst, whenever they're praying, it's all sparking that same area within the brain, right? So it's almost as if we are hardwired for this belief in more that's out there than just us. And I think that whenever we pray or whenever we meditate or whatever, we are connecting, if you will, with the other, with the all in all, with the universe, with whatever your particular insight on what God is, right? And I think that that is the key to prayer. I think that is the key to, peace on earth and all this other kind of stuff. The idea that at the end of the day, we are consciousness that is enveloped in some sort of flesh and blood that only has a limited time here, and that consciousness is part of everything. We're all connected by that consciousness, and if we start looking at it that way, then we're going to do more to protect not only the earth around us, but other people's vessels that hold this consciousness that we also share with everybody else.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah.
You're still good with questions here, Ron? Yeah, we're
Are we
still good to
okay?
go.
Yeah, Jack 1948 UK. Is Bigfoot? If Bigfoot is an image placed in our minds, does that mean that the Patterson Gimlin film is fake?
It is.
Yeah, that's a good question, right? So again, I think that what we talked about a little bit earlier is that I have no problem thinking that these things can manifest and take solid form in our world. And the first time I ever saw Bigfoot was on my floor model black and white television whenever I was just a little guy, because the Patterson Gimlin film came out, I think it was in '67, and I was born in 1969. So by the time I first saw it, I was under 5 years old whenever I first saw that creature moving across my television set. So what was I to make of it? I mean, as a kid, I saw, this is definitely an animal out there. What's going on? But it's almost like the touchstone for everything, because I want to believe it so badly, but then I also understand that Roger Patterson went out there trying to film a Bigfoot documentary. He left for several hours the morning in which that movie was shot. And he also told Bob Gimlin that under no circumstances are you to fire at this creature. So there are a lot of extenuating circumstances behind this, but I think that if you were in a court of law, that you could provide reasonable doubt, which is unfortunate. But also, as a skeptic, you really have to get to it. That doesn't mean it's not real. I'm just saying that there's enough evidence out there to at least question whether this was legitimate. And indeed, if it is not legitimate, whoever put it together needs an Academy Award, because it still holds up to the test of time.
Yeah, you make a good point, though.
Yeah, and I think I got a related question to do with the Patterson, and I can't find it. Right, we'll move on. Let's have a look. Lee Roscoe question: what does Ron think about the cubes being seen in the forest and disappearing into the floor? Have you seen any of those there, Ron?
No, I've seen the orbs. I've never seen cubes, although I have heard of people seeing such things. If you're seeing cubes, I would love to see where this is, because the idea of an orb, it makes sense in our physics, right? Because things, it's very easy to make an oval whenever you blow, a bubble and everything like that. That's a great shape. A cube is a little bit more difficult. But I do not doubt that people are seeing all forms of light taking different shapes. But again, like the orbs that I saw, these ones also were basically assumed right into the forest itself. It was as if they came out of the forest, and at the end, whenever they were done interacting with us, they simply went back into the forest fabric itself.
Yeah, and we got a report probably a month ago of a guy traveling on a train, and obviously you've got nothing to do but watch the countryside, and as he's looking into the woodland, it weren't forest, he saw a cube. And I haven't got the description of it here. Well, we know what a cube's described like, but what he saw inside it and the lines and the coloration. But we'll probably do that one Sunday or in week, guys, if anybody's interested in the cubes, because I found it fascinating.
Okay, I'll move on with this question from John Paul Body. Hi, Paul and Mr. Murphy. Have you ever found any cases of people building lasting relationships with creatures, such as dogmen, werewolves, or Bigfoot?
Well, I don't think the werewolves. I think that anytime we talk about dogmen, there's always a fear there. I've never heard of a happy encounter with a dogman. But I did interview a lady several years ago. Actually, what happens is somebody will come out to hear you talk at a conference, and then they will gradually start following you around, because they want to test to see how you're going to take them, right? Because nobody wants to share these things that are happening to them with just anybody. So this one elderly woman saw me about 2 or 3 different occasions, and then she decided to share the story with me. And she talked about this Bigfoot that manifested within her home. And I'd never heard anything about this before. She was doing housework, and all of a sudden the thing was so tall it had to bend over because its head was touching the ceiling. And it would just be in her home watching her. And she said at first it was, unbelievably frightening, but then she became more and more used to it, to the point that she started to call it her laundry ape, because it enjoyed watching her do laundry, and also enjoyed watching her do like the dishes and just mundane things. And she said this went on for a period of several months, and then the creature just completely vanished again. That's the only report that I'd ever heard about that. But it's odd, though, isn't it? Because it does fill in a lot of different gaps. Could this be what people would call a brownie? Was this an alien? Was this a ghost? So many different areas in which this particular event falls into.
It's an incredible account, that, isn't it? It really is. And that, once again, it tells you that these things are kind of metaphysical. If she's seen it, is that a hologram? Has that been placed in her mind? We've got a guy who comes onto Cliffs with us, and I'll keep it quick because Les has probably got a few more questions. And his ex-wife said that she was doing the ironing. So you're on about doing washing and ironing with this last story, and she looked down and saw a huge pair of fur-covered feet. I mean, he's told us on Linny's in chat, and Pete will be listening. He's told us on the cliff tops about this story. She told him she saw nothing else, just these feet. And
wow,
yeah, and she looked over the ironing board and saw these. Just crazy.
That is great cooperation, though. Again, different continents, different times, and everything. Yeah, I'd never heard anything like that. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I'd never heard of an instance like this before.
Yeah, well, we have another one which is on the YouTube channel, where a guy said he saw one come into his bedroom when he were in bed, tucked up in his dad's bed. But let's get back to the questions for you,
right,
Ron.
Yeah, Peter Shy, Ron, do you think Patterson got the best ever footage of Bigfoot due to the horses they had with them masking the smell of humans catching Patty unawares?
You know what? I think that's a good point, because Ron Moorhead, that recorded the Sierra sounds, they also had horses with them as well too, and I think that does say a lot about masking smells. And horses do, they're an animal, so I think it does set things more at ease. Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Okay, I don't know if I've got one or two, unless you want to continue with another subject, guys.
I really don't mind, because are you okay answering questions?
Oh, absolutely, sir. No, absolutely, yes.
Let's just run with this for 5 or 10 minutes, Les, because otherwise we'll get punished for not getting them out.
Well, we can always keep them for another show, can't we, Paul? So, yeah. But Mike the Disabled Welshman, hi, Ronald. If Bigfoot is proven to be flesh and blood creature, how long do you think it's been on this planet?
Oh, wow. That's a great question as well, too. So I would think that human beings have been in our physical form here as modern anatomical human beings for, it could be as much as 200,000 years, but we'll say conservatively 100,000 years we've been in this form. And I think that we have known about these creatures. Now, by known, I meant our species has been conscious about these kind of creatures since we were still developing as hominids, as when we were still in the Australopithecus phase, when we were still coming out of the savannah and becoming human. So I think that we've known about these things while we were still on the bottom of the food chain and struggling to come up with fire and trying to cut pieces of rock to cut things with. I think that we've known about these things for that long. And interestingly, they've known about us for that long as well too.
Yeah, obviously we're kind of all hypothesizing on what we think, but I wonder if they've been at that intelligence level all that time, and if they have, why did they let us advance to the level that we've got, where we potentially could harm them or, I don't know, hunt them down? It's Right.
Well, we do have glimpses of this in literature, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? We always talk about the character of Enkidu, right? But there's also another character in there that's a man-like creature covered in hair called Humbaba. And he is not seen until the protagonist enter his world, enter his forest, and start cutting down the trees. At that point, he takes umbrage and then confronts our hero, and then he is promptly killed. I think that kind of stuff is probably common knowledge to these particular creatures, that if we do have any interconnectivity with these things in a real world setting, it's usually going to become very disastrous, because we as humans like to kill things. I mean, that's just who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can't exploit it for food, we'll exterminate it for fun. That's
absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's what we do. And if you look, even whenever you talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh, or we talk about Beowulf and the idea of Grendel as well too, whenever we have to have, a group of warriors coming out here to slay something, right? We are encroaching in on their land, and almost, all of these stories involve humanity going into the place where the wild things are, right? We're going from the civilization of our world into the chaos of nature, where the frequency is definitely not our frequency. And then what we will do is we will pound the hell out of that frequency until it makes some sort of sense to us. And usually it makes sense whenever things are killed off.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, then let's hit us with another one. We've got 10 minutes. We'll spend a few minutes talking about Ron's books, last 2 minutes, and where we can get information on him. But this is from Phil, isn't it?
TP Hunting question: we can't accommodate a further dimension with our own 3-4 with Sam. It begs the question: do you believe these things may be of biocentric thought, a thought form?
Yeah, so I think when we get to tulpas, the idea that's definitely within Eastern philosophy, the idea that if enough people have this kind of collective thought about something, it can take on an actual form. Although that's definitely not what Dogman TP Hunting is putting up here. But I again, going back to what I said, I think that we have had within our development, within our evolution as the human being, we've encountered these things every step of the way. So the thought that we have in our minds of these things is whenever there was legitimate interaction. And I think now what we have is these kind of nightmares that come back. It's kind of like a PTSD. Whenever we're out in the woods, there's still those kind of things, that there's something strange out there. Part of our brain that has not been completely atrophied away, that very primal part of our brain, that flight or fight response that we're not used to having. I think when we go out into the woods, that sometimes sparks us into understanding there are things out there. And I have indeed felt that a few times. And I think a lot of people have. We get the willies, as my grandmother would call it, or we get some sort of premonition that there's something out there. And I think that is just something that we've had since the very beginning. It's a factor that has kept us alive as we were trying to get out of the state that we were to becoming, civilized human beings.
Yeah.
Right, I'll just give you an update on what Ian Linney says.
Paul, because Linney's heard the story
on towels.
That's correct. Yeah,
black handprints.
So what I was talking about earlier with Jeremy's ex-wife talking about doing the ironing, and then she looked. I think he said she looked down. Linney will correct me. Looked down or looked over the ironing board. The huge pair of feet and nothing else, fur-covered feet. But also, They were seeing big black handprints, as Lynn is saying, on towels and around the house. I did know that, Ian. What I was thinking to myself, I'm just thinking, I don't want to encroach on what Ron's telling us, but you're spot on. And obviously it's interested Ron as well, because we've got this infiltration of this alleged creature in somebody's home, which is an urban environment, which you wouldn't expect. But
that's right.
Big Bird is asking, I thought that the paranormal was Satan's work. When did the religion or people of the cloth start opening their minds that it's not satanic if you are into researching the paranormal?
All right. So again, 1692, our friend Robert Kirk, he stated in his writings that only the atheist cannot see fairies, that in order to see fairies, you have to have the spiritual knowledge, because, right, what is faith but the belief in things not seen, as Paul would say. But I think we see glimmers throughout history of people that call themselves religious opening up to the idea that there's more out there. We have great written accounts of things like werewolves and vampires from the Middle Ages. We even have King James, who was writing about witchcraft and the idea of the kind of damage that can be done, to the point that Shakespeare wrote Macbeth off of what King James had to say. So I think throughout history we have the knowledge, and even in the Old Testament, whenever you see people going to necromancers to talk to the dead, to find out things that are going. So I think it's always been with us. But what happens is the church people of the cloth have to put up walls, because if we can go into the natural world and discover the spirituality that is supposed to be contained only in the walls of a church, then you have a problem, because nature never holds out its hand asking for a tithe, right? That never happens. So I think so much of it has to do with control. Especially when it comes to women, because throughout time, women have been looked at as a source of, midwives. They were the ones to go to if you were sick. They bring life into the world, and they have been the ones that have been so maligned as sorceresses and witches, that we had no problem killing tens of thousands of them, simply because we believe they were, cavorting with the devil. So it's a very, very sad lineage, and I did write a book on witches several years ago that goes over the idea of how we once accepted them as seers and as shamans, and to the point that they become so vilified that they become nothing more than agents of the devil. And it definitely has something to be said about how we patriarchal societies view women.
Yeah, thank you. And we've got 4 minutes left, Les. What do you want to do? We've got another question. That's what we're doing.
Dogman TV, unseen question. Why is there a palpable sense of fear in lots of cases, from aliens to cryptid experiences? Do they mean us harm? I know you talked about the heebie-jeebies and the willies.
The fear, actually, if we'd have gone off questions, I was going to go on to the fear. So if Ron touches on this, and then we can talk about the fear afterwards if you want, when Ron's gone. But what do you think?
You know what? I really think that, again, like I said, it's the idea of flight or fight, or it's even something like, there's something out there, and we we don't have firsthand knowledge in our lives of what it is, and it's just what keeps us alive. It's going to caution more than, let's go investigate what's going on. I felt that numerous times. And like I said, the times I felt it strongly is whenever I had children with me, and it becomes almost a matter of an instinct where I have to keep a child safe because there's something out there that I do not understand. Not necessarily that it's going to harm us, but it's something I simply don't understand.
Yeah, thank you. And I think at this moment, Ron, where can we find out about, or anybody wanting to buy your books, wanting to find out more about you, because literally you've just held this last hour, and I know that you would have done another hour quite comfortably, so we want you back.
And I can't wait to come back, guys. I really can. I appreciate you guys accommodating me like this today. So you can find me on Amazon, of course. My books are on Amazon. You can also get me on social media, like on Facebook, Ronald L. Murphy Jr. Or if you want to give me an email, it's Ronald L for my middle initial. So Ronald L. Murphy Jr. at yahoo.com. And if you agree with something that I say, or even if you disagree with something that I say, I would love to hear from you, because the only way we're going to get closer to any kind of truth is by having an intelligent dialogue about such things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Right.
And, are we winding this up now then for the first hour for Ron? And we're going to let you get on with what you've got to be doing, and we'll take over from from this moment, Ron. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to be on for 2 hours next time.
Excellent. Looking forward to
we
it
might
already.
go for 3, Ron. Can you manage 3?
We'll see what we can do. We'll see what we can do, gentlemen. Talk soon.
Okay. Have a great day. Take care. Thank you, Ronald Murphy. Weren't that brilliant? And I didn't have to do anything, which is exactly how I like it. Any questions in there that might apply to us?
Just let me filter some of these.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll just have a look at these names. We've got Tino, Anarchy, Blue Shift, Stargazer.
From Blue Shift, yeah.
Yeah. Just one sec. One sec, Les. Andy Codes, Big Bird, Carl, Dan. See you at weekend, Carl. That'll be good to see you. I know Lynn is in. Pete will be in. Yorkshire Grey, Warren Hardcastle, Lee Roscoe's in. Nickname, and what we got, 169 people, so there's bound to be loads that I've missed, but apologies. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, Blue Shift. Yeah, question for Paul. In 1947, how many deaths were reported on, Paul? Because that's an awful lot you said in the stream.
Absolutely. And I put it away. But do you know something? Anybody have thought that the guy who asked that question, I don't know who asked the question about 1947, had set it up because I'd just been looking and I put it away. Look, that says 1947. And so I don't know if, and I'm not going to read them all out now, but just within that 3-month period, I think there were about 6. Come on, let's have a look. Flare scene. You put me on spot here, Blue, aren't you? But there you go. I think there were about 6 bodies found in the water. But it's one that we're a bit more preparation. We could probably go into in more detail because it were pretty much off the cuff, simply because the question of 1947 came up on that impromptu live streaming week, and I thought, well, I've just been looking at that. Let's just have a go at that. About 6, I think, but I'll tell you in more detail. We'll have a look. We'll have another go at it on Sunday, shall we? There's a lot of things we're going to do Sunday because that's something else I've said.
And not so much question, but an observation there, Paul, from Tracy Barron. I wish I had a good memory as Paul. How he remembers the year's events amazes me. I struggle with weeks, never mind years.
Do you know, I don't think it... sometimes, Tracy, you know, when the guest's speaking, and I think this will apply to everybody, I hope it does, or I'm losing it, I'm making little notes as they're speaking, because obviously you're intent on what they're speaking about, and you forget what you wanted to ask them about, and I wanted to ask about the fear, and I noticed that TP Hunting brought it up, and I thought, well, what do you guys think about the fear? And I'm asking it to the guys, the people sat listening to this now. What do you think of your own experiences when you've maybe had a UFO experience, cryptid, ghostly experience? Did a fear accompany the experience, or was it elative? I don't know. I think in most instances we've got a fear, and what interests me is, does the fear come prior to the actual event? Meaning, is the phenomena somehow interacting with I don't know, with the chemicals inside our body even, or is the atmosphere changing and we're sensing it, just like when a dog seems to perceive something, or a cat? Let us know.
And I think equally important is if you've experienced this fear initially with whatever experience you've had, how does this manifest itself as years go on in your life? How does it induce more fear as the years go on, or is it something you come to terms with?
As a child, and I can only talk about myself.
This is a general question out there for everybody out there, as well as yourself, Paul.
But I'll try and answer a bit of it until you hit me with something else, Les. So it's not your fist. As a child, once I'd seen them beings in my bedroom, I was waiting every single night in fear. Every night, without shadow of a doubt. I've changed that picture on a Front Night People one, but every single night in fear. And the book's just a collection, as we've said, of cameos of events. It weren't every night. It weren't probably every 6 months. But when it happened, you can guarantee the gap between, I'd been waiting for it to happen. I'd never read it when it happened. But yeah, so I think when you've had that initial fear, It stays with you. It's a form of PTSD, isn't it? It absolutely stays with a person. I suppose it's same in a life situation. I mean, I've had friends who've been out and been assaulted, and the fear of going out again into a bar or a club is there. It's constantly there. It never leaves them, because obviously they've experienced something that's truly traumatic. How could it? Go on then, Les, what we're doing. Let's have a look.
Stan Smith, the cube seen south of Tay Bridge is the same area. A Bigfoot was seen by a civil servant at 1 a.m. in the morning after leaving work.
Really? So there's a connection. So I would say to you, Stan, well, not necessarily say it to you, but to the people in here, do we think that the cube is connected to the sighting of the Bigfoot, or do we think that the area is throwing out lots and lots of different types of phenomena? You know, and I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to that one. I suppose it depends on what your belief system is. Me personally, I think that we've got lots and lots of different phenomena presenting in these what we'd call these thin areas, these areas that other people will say high strangeness.
And I've got a question for everybody in the chat, actually, Paul. Is what kind of standard of evidence would suit you as to what's acceptable proof? What would be acceptable proof? What evidence would you need for all this to be settled in your mind? And I don't know, it could range from seeing a UFO on the front garden to believing what Paul, Les, and all the guests what come onto the show say.
You're absolutely spot on. And we've all got different levels of what would be acceptable proof. When me and Steve Ashbridge interviewed the ladies at, and let's put some questions in caps for that, please, and let us know what your views are. Great question, Les. Well, when we interviewed the ladies from Sproutley who'd seen the aliens, seen the UFO, and then claimed to have seen the aliens. Mm-hmm. They'd had their proof. They'd gone past. If they're telling truth, no need to believe that they weren't. But they'd gone past this, I believe, to knowing. But after that, it changed them, and I got the feeling that if a satellite went past, as while they sat in gardening on an evening, they thought. Well, I didn't think it. They thought that this were the visitors. So they'd had this overwhelming proof, and then everything else seemed to be overwhelming as well as regards. They perceived everything as some kind of alien visitation, and once again, not quite what you're on about, but just jumping from that, the old lady Muriel believed that it was a spiritual, almost biblical event that they'd witnessed, and the daughter Sandra thought they were aliens, different cultures, both seen same thing, but different upbringings and different places. You know what I'm saying. It just a different time that they'd been brought up, even though they were both living in the same time when they saw and experienced it. One saw aliens, one saw.
And I think this is what our guest Ron was into. That Paul is, each individual takes a different take on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It could be for religious reasons or whatever.
Yeah, well, we went up onto the cliffs on last night, Wednesday night, and quite a few of us up there, and sometimes it dulls it. And I'm not saying it did Wednesday night. That's not the reason I'm saying it. And then other times it amplifies it. It's just the energy that you take there. But I think we all agreed it were pretty flat as regards the atmosphere and everything Wednesday. But Terry who's done a Sunday with us and told us about his stories, ghost stories and things, came up, traveled a considerable distance and came up and spent a good few hours with us. And he claims looking out to sea, there was like a camera flash below him, just below where he was. And bearing in mind, you've got 300 foot sheer drop cliffs, and there's nobody down there with a camera. So that was about the only thing of note that happened that night. But I mean, it happened for Terry, interestingly. No reason to believe that he's making it up, because we're all coming out with the strange and unusual. Because on Monday night, as I said, when we did the impromptu live stream, the most incredible thing for me, and I found it incredible, when Mark's shining his torch along the contours of the land, and he's just got it above the land, and it just seemed to hit this what looked like a small moon that just switched off. And Mark said, do you think that it activated when I put the torch beam on it, as in Mark put it on it, or do you think that it was shocked and switched off? It were always there and weren't supposed to be seen. And it's difficult. I'd never seen anything like that. And I noted that last night he couldn't stop going along the contours of the land with his torch, a bit obsessive with it, because we don't use lights quite honestly much at all. But he were hoping to see that again. It really was a spectacular thing to see when you're looking at a blue sky and suddenly your torch beam touches something that just lights up and gone.
Yeah, and I'll just put this on from Linnea, who supports what you've just been saying, really. Paul, you and Mark saw the light in Mark's torch beam on Monday. Mark kept looking yesterday, and it was bugging him. He says it was like a small moon type thing. Very strange.
Yeah, and that's the true picture of Linnea there that you can see on that one there. That is actually what it looks like.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. So, but that's correct, and it's really stuck in Mark's mind. And obviously, I just happened to turn around at the right time, because if not, he'd have been trying to describe that to 6 or 7 people there, and we wouldn't have thought, oh, what a load of BS. But we'd have been thinking, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend what he was talking about. That you're looking at a blue sky, dark blue sky, steep contours at land, and this moon just lights up and disappears as quick as a light switch. Okay. Dean Cooling, hi Dean, good to see you.
Yeah, evening all. I've been here, but keeping low key. Well, you're not on the wanted. You're not on the wanted list, are you, Dean? Or anything like that. Yeah,
it's always good.
Let's go and find something else here. I'll let you read this one out. Well, I think I know what the tree blind thraz is.
What do you think were made to pay and accept taxation apart from breeding, which seems to be allowed for no cost at all?
Have they made us?
Have they made us so we like sex, so we breed? I've no idea. I suppose, in a way, I can see where you're going with it, but we aren't going too deep with it. I suppose we're one of the only species that seem to copulate. That's a good word, isn't it? Just because we enjoy it. Because other animals don't seem to do.
No, I think there's another species. There is an animal.
Oh, bonobos. There's a species of chimpanzees that do it. Bonobos, they call them.
Yeah.
How did Tree Blind? How did you get us onto this one? Eh?
Yeah. Well, I think the general question is: are we a breeding program, really?
We could be. Like we said other day. You know, when we said other day that. We might, when people have said, oh, they're here to help us, it's fabulous, they've disarmed nukes. Well, what if they're just protecting their asset? And I mean, we might think with that I might be saying it as though we're some kind of special species and their asset just could be the planet and they've no care for us whatsoever.
No, and kind of a follow-on from that really is William Nielsen. How does all the phenomena fit into the big picture if reality is a simulation of sorts?
I don't know. I don't know. Perhaps you do, William. Well, you probably don't because you won't be asking a question, but I don't know. If reality is a simulation, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. That don't tell you, does it?
Okay, I'll just we'll get over there in a second.
Oh, no, I think Dean Collins put pigs too. Excuse me.
Oh, yeah. Pigs as well, is it? Yeah.
Oh, right.
Okay, right. So a bit of a tongue-in-cheek one here, I think, from Mr. Lou Roscoe. Question: if Bigfoot is telepathic, what does Dogman say back?
Oh Christ! Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know, but I think Bigfoot is telepathic, but it kind of makes you, or as in, we know that people have had this suggestion or these voices in their mind whilst looking at these humongous creatures, and that's happened with the Dogman phenomena. But it happens with, as I've said many times, it happens with the psychic mediums who receive the voices. It happens with alien abduction. So, is it a trickster? Is it one phenomena presenting as many things as Ron allured to? Is it the Fae? Have we been looking in the wrong place all of the time? I mean, it's not the first time I've said could the Fae be responsible for it? Everything, because these diminutive beings and often spheres of light that are described as these elementals are in all cultures all around the world. And wouldn't it be amazing if people have been looking to the stars for some kind of proof of intelligence from elsewhere, and it's just been right under us feet all along, and it's just been changing the game and changing the narrative as we've evolved as a species, and it's just been there all along. Incredible.
Well, yeah, and I think this next one kind of follows on, really. Yeah, Denton's Wolf Bolton. Is there a link between Bigfoot and the Fae folk?
Denton, I can't say, can I, that, oh, yeah, I think there is, but with a knowing, but the feeling that I'm getting is that there's some connection there, and these things are what the other religious people think of the jinn. The jinn could be the Fae. I know that's probably going to upset some people because they're going to say, oh no, it's a totally different entity, but we don't know, do we? It just seems to be something that can change and shift into many different forms. See Martin Abbas's in nickname, Wendy Rose, let's have a look, Stargazer, Ginge, and yeah, thanks for support, guys. 174 people here, and crazy, weren't it, that we did that little live stream 30 minutes before we decided to do it, Les, didn't we? And
yeah.
So much support.
Right, okay. See what we can. I think.
I'll just see that what Deb Shaw says. Sorry, Les. Steve, because it's in not in caps. Steve Mira, Barry Fitzgerald are on it, measuring commonalities. That's the way forward. And they are on it, Deb, but I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I've been on it for years and years, the common link between it all. I've noted that people are saying this is a multi-phenomena thing that we're looking at. And I think I'm probably one of the first people to have said that. And people are jumping on it all the time now because everything seems to be linked. But yeah, they are on it, and they're doing a great job, Deb. Yeah, but multi-phenomena, and we should all be, I think, striving to look at all the different genres of the unexplained, because we're stronger. Let's face it, we're stronger, Les, aren't we? And you guys out there, singularly, the cryptid researcher, the UFO researcher, the people interested in the ghosts and the spirit phenomena, if we're all segregated, we're not as strong. And we don't have to join forces just to be stronger, but we are stronger by, in my opinion, accepting that these bonds and these threads of the truth, similarities and commonalities, as Deb said, are running through it all. And that is the way to go with it. And it makes us stronger as a group of people looking for the truth in this subject.
Okay, there is some responses to some of the questions that we asked earlier, but I will just go in order for my own sanity.
For your own sanity?
Okay. For my own sanity, yeah. I need to hold on to that, Paul.
No, you've got to hold your sanity.
Robert Baker. Hi, do you think the Patty film was caught due to the all-style camera used? It was not digital, the digital could be drained of battery or sensed. That's a good point, that, actually.
Well, no, it is a good point, Robert, and I think it's one that's been made before, and you probably already know that. And a lot of people have, a lot of researchers will say, if you want to connect with the phenomena, if you want to see something, don't take cameras.
So,
I'm guilty of it.
That, what camera was it? Was it the wind-up one where you had to wind it up, and obviously it unwinds and revolves?
I don't know.
Or was it a battery on itself? Even in them days, there was.
I don't think it was battery. I don't think it was a battery camera. But Robert might be able
knows
to.
In the chat can put us right on that.
Yeah, put us right on that. But obviously, these things are having an effect on electrical components, aren't they? And I noted when Andrew Collins came up onto Cliffs with us, he fetched an array of listening equipment, digital voice recorders and all sorts of things. well, if it's about 8, and if Andrew was sat here now, he'd tell you that they all drained. You got no, and they were charged. We've had it. I mean, when we were with Peter Masters, didn't we? And Peter took a brand new computer up there, laptop, and that drained. You know, then when we went to Speed and it were back up again. I don't know how that works, but it don't make sense, does it?
Anarchy X, would there be a chance of getting Dr. Jonathan Reed on? His case is amazing. Do you know, I'm going to play a little bit dummy. I don't know who the guy is.
It's right, and I'm not 100% familiar with Jonathan Reed's case, and no disrespect, I will try and get him on, but I thought it had been debunked. Is this the guy that claimed that he'd killed an alien? I'm pretty sure of it, and kept it in a freezer. And apologies if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I remember that. Then, if that's the one, yeah.
And I see Dogman TP Hunting's just put a question up that's interesting. Well, it's kind of interesting, but we'll get there in a minute.
Paul, do you know why there are convoys of trucks near Speeton? Is this today?
Do you know, Fortman, we've been on the cliffs a few times this week. I've been in Danes Dyke today. Me and the Bobster, we've been investigating. He's just been everywhere. You'll be seeing that on Saturday, I would think. Met up with Patrick Daniel quite by chance as well. And we found some more deer fatalities in Danes Dyke, unbelievably, today. Crazy, isn't it? Same place where I found other 3. But you've just put me onto something now, Fort Mine. I don't know. And if you don't want to put it in the chat, contact me afterwards, because I'd like to hear about this. I mean, convoys of trucks. Obviously, I'm not interested in Arctic wagons parked up. I'm assuming you mean probably military trucks. Interesting, and I didn't know.
Okay, let's move over. Right, so we've got this from Jojo. Paul, nice to see you today. Looking well. Although brief, did you get up to Danes Dyke today? I was held up with appointments, so I did not get there.
I did, Jojo, and it was lovely to see you. I didn't expect to see you in town, and didn't find. I'm not going to put up. I'm not going to say what the picture I've been sent in Danes Dyke, and I went round and I did a little short, hopefully for Saturday, and I say much the same. Bearing in mind, I say on camera, and it weren't an animal. I did find some afterwards. But so I can talk about them in the short. But this were more macabre. This were quite. It were dark and not a nice thing to be placed in there. And I didn't find it, Jojo. But so cryptic, this people, innit? I'm sorry, but I just don't think it's appropriate to be talking about it on stream, because it's not. It's just not. But I went and looked for it from the picture I'd been sent, and I knew the picture I'd been sent was from Danes Dyke, and it had been removed. So that's as much as I'll say. And people are going, "What's he on about?" I'm sorry, I'm not going to say it.
Okay, then.
Thanks, Jojo.
Yeah, Deb Shaw. Hi, Paul and Les. Me and Wendy went to the cliffs last Saturday after the OLM. No one else there, and the sea was way too quiet for my liking. We didn't stay long. There was a weird vibe. Not a good CE5 night.
Well, that's a shame, Deb, and I wish I'd have known you were going up. I'd have come up and spent some time with you, seriously, because I enjoyed your company last time you were up this way, and I hope you enjoyed the conference.
Okay, let's have a look. Tom Gatlin. The fear 100% evolves around from a primordial feeling of what terror lurks in the night from our ancestors.
Yeah, I would agree, Tom. It's almost a fight or flight kind of feeling, isn't it? And it just drops on a person. I mean, I'm hoping. No, I'm not hoping, because actually Les came up last. What night did he come up? Last Friday, Les?
Yeah.
Les came up last Friday, and whilst on cliff tops, we brought his cameras up, and we just had a bit of an impromptu interview with a few people in the darkness with a light on. Ian were good enough to hold light for a few of them, which really helped. And we got talking to Mark, who comes up there, and I've said this one before, but I really think it's an important thing. I think the fear is one of the most overlooked excuse me, the fear is one of the most overlooked things within the phenomena. Everybody's looking for the cryptid. Everybody's looking to see the UFO. But it's these feelings that descend on a person, I think, are just as important. And Mark, a guy who's done wild camping, done shooting, spent time alone in the Highlands. I think he's on Moors this weekend on his own. Never experienced anything like he experienced up there. And he lives in Bempton, by the way. And he comes up most nights when we're up, and he'll just loom out at darkness, just walk up. And he like I've said to you guys before, he walked along the path on his own. He said, and this fear just come upon him. And he just fought through it, he said. I'm not going to walk back, I'll keep walking. And he just felt like he'd walked out of it. So what is it, that atmospheric change? Is it this bubble of strangeness that descends? If he'd have stayed in that zone, do you think anything would have happened? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Sally and her husband came up a few years ago, and they walked along the path and claimed that it felt like they'd just walked into a glass tunnel, but they walked out of it. And as they walked out of it, she spoke to her husband, and he went, "Yeah, I felt it as well." And they went back, and it weren't there. It's so strange. It's happened to me, and I'm sure there's people in chat who this has happened to, and many times this feeling, this descent into this disjointed reality, seems to drop on a person before the main event, if we can call that a main event. What's it doing? Is it something, I don't know, altering chemicals in our body so that we're releasing these chemicals, the fear that's within us? I don't really know. I don't know. Is it something almost animal? It's strange. Okay,
Zeno, what is the cube? Is the cryptid in its real form before it's applied an image? What if the cube is the cryptid?
Yeah. I think that's what you mean. What if do you know, Zeno? That's why I said to Ron earlier, what came first, the cube? Apologies. What came first, the sphere, the orb, or the Bigfoot? Because very often these things are seen in close proximity, as Ron alluded to as well, and sometimes within the same kind of sighting. And people have talked about thinking that these things are traveling about in these spheres. I'm not going to say that they are, because I've no knowledge or anything to support that. But it's strange that the spheres of light are seen in these locations, and sometimes in a close proximity to where the cryptid is. And I know I've said a sphere, but what if the cube? What if it could be? I guess, I don't know. Without some inside knowledge, we're never going to know. And then I don't shoot the people down that say, "Oh, I can't stand it," when somebody says, "I know." But what a shame if somebody actually does know, and they have been imparted this knowledge, and none of us believe them. You know,
that's it, isn't it? It comes back to belief, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Anarchy X, my mate saw something like a cloaked figure in the road. He felt very cold, but he still doesn't believe. So he'd seen something, Paul.
Yeah,
but he still doesn't believe anything.
Yeah, don't that make you kind of scratch your head, Anarchy? And I've spoke to people like that before who've had a profound experience, but I don't believe in all like that. Where does that come from? That's nuts, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's absolutely crazy. So I quite believe you that they've probably seen something. And that, but the cloaked figures, what's with the cloaked figures? You know, and some people have claimed that they'd seen a monk, wouldn't they? You know what I mean? Or a nun or something, or the ghost of a monk. I know on, the top road out of Bridlington, I think I've told this story once before. My friend Mark has been on here. Mark, in fact, he's probably listening. And he used to work at a factory called Sarah Lee's, the cake factory. If people remember the Sarah Lee's cream cakes and things. And this guy who worked with him used to drive it on a push bike along the top road and down Carnaby to the factory every morning. You know, obviously in the winter it's dark. And then he started going the long way around, down into Bridlington and then up through Kingsgate. And Mark asked him why. He said, because, I don't know, one morning, we'll say 3 weeks ago, because I haven't got a time span between this. He says, I'll never do that road again. He says, I was cycling along the road, he says, and this ghostly monk just drifted across the road, a cloaked figure. It's interpretation, isn't it? You know what I mean? But it's not forced to have been a monk. You know, there's lots of people see cloaked figures. Jessica, my daughter, when she were in that farmhouse at Rudston, said that she saw the cloaked figures at the bottom of the bed, pouring green liquid that were glowing into a conical-shaped glass. And a partner at the time were fast asleep and she couldn't wake him up. And there's two, let me get this right, one tall one and two small ones. She's probably listening to this and going, oh, no, Dad, you're talking about that again. She said, and I just transfixed, laid in bed looking at these figures, and this liquid were clearly, everything were clearly solid because there were an oak chest at the bottom of the bed. And I know there were because I'd been to the house. Yeah. And this conical-shaped vessel that the green glowing liquid was in was on it. So, you know, it was clearly sat on it, or in her mind it was there. She said, and one of these cloaked beings, one of the little ones, looked, and she couldn't see her face, and looked at her. Yeah. And she turned away and just sort of give it that in the darkness. And when she opened her eyes again, it was stood at the side of the bed, and that's all she remembers. And it's a farmhouse in Rudston. But I'll not set farm because obviously they don't live there now, and somebody else who does might not want that memory imprinted in their minds, especially if you live there. Yeah. So there you go. Okay. Drew Hollings. Nickname. Yeah. Saying acceptable proof. Well, not just not a taboo subject. A good start. People open and on board, like in here. Yeah, you make not. Well, yeah, but a taboo subject. Do you think UFOs now then nickname is a taboo subject? I'm not sure it is, Les. What do you think? Well, he's just saying it's. I don't know. Is it? I know he's answering the acceptable proof part, and people in here, and we're sharing our stories, and so that. So what I think what I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, nickname. But are you saying that just by listening to the Truth Proof channel or probably other channels, that's enough for you? Is that what you're saying? Well, are you waiting for him to reply there, Les? Were you? if he wants to tell us that, yeah. If that's how you read it, Paul. That is how I read it. But just to extend that, though, and I'm not sure. What do you think, audience? Not just Les. Do you think that the subject of UFOs is a taboo subject still? I think it's widely spoken about now, and I think that people accept the reality of something visiting us or something being here. Do I think that the subject of cryptids is a taboo subject? I still think it still is. I think it's probably a few decades behind the UFO subject as it regards getting some kind of acceptance. Obviously, the ghost subject has been around and talked about. That seems more acceptable that people see ghosts and come on, get up here. And other phenomena, but I don't know. That's interesting. What do people think there? Yeah, who think that these subjects are taboo still? I think I've seen some kind of rough surveys done in America, Paul. Over the years, the Sasquatch Bigfoot phenomena has actually risen in credibility. Yeah, you know, it's gone up exponentially. Are you with me? That people actually believe these things are there. So So whether that's due to modern media, or people actually experience something, Paul, I don't know. No, it could be a mixture of both, and plus the fact that there's so much of it out there now. There's so many people talking about these things. You know, little channel like Truth Proof, and we're sharing these stories, getting amazing people on like Ron, and we also want Ron Moorhead back. It's going to have to be a pre-record, but we'll get Ron on and get that one out there to you guys as soon as we can, because he is a lot better now. He's not been very well, so I wish him well. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and when you've got people such as that talking and sharing these experiences, it's settling in the psyche of people. It's actually getting ingrained within us that there's some reality, there's some truth to all of this. And you know, the funny thing is, Paul, is that
we get all these red top newspapers, tabloids, and they print all these kind of ridiculous stories, or they're actual base stories, but they're embellished to such a fact that the headlines look ridiculous. But do you think all that could be really, that could be helping the people acknowledging that this phenomena is
I suppose it helps acknowledge it, but it helps. It also holds it back in a little bit of a way, because the people who aren't really interested in the subject, when they're opening their paper up and they just see it as a joke.
Yeah, so
do you know what I mean? Within thousands and thousands, and that covers the Bigfoot, the big cat, the UFO. They see it as a joke, especially if the mainstream media is presenting it as a joke.
Yeah.
And where's that coming from? And I don't mean there's some massive conspiracy here, but where's that coming from, Les? Who's feeding that narrative?
Yeah, but it kind of works the opposite with me, and I know it does with you. I'm kind of critical in so much as if there's a story printed like that, whether there be just 6 lines in that what are true and the rest of it's rubbish, then I want to know more about that. Are you with me? But yeah. I take on board what you say. They could be doing a lot of harm by it's ridicule, isn't it? It's ridicule on the front page.
It's ridicule. I see people within this subject, good people, and they get really animated and hyped up that they're going to be talking to the paper. And I've been asked over the years loads and loads of times. I got asked to do the documentary with the social media, huge social media girl, and I just turned it down straight away. I think somebody else did it, but it just ends up in an absolutely. It just ends up as a joke. I wouldn't do it. I'm talking to Ancient Aliens tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind saying. I told you today, and I probably won't do it. But I'm talking to them at 3 o'clock because they want to do something. But I love it, just being able to do what I want to do, and I'm just do my own thing. It's just like doing that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know these other people, the Ancient Aliens or whatever it is. It could be anybody else.
They're not actually Ancient Aliens people. I'm not talking to some Ancient Aliens. I'm on about the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're Ancient Aliens, me and Les.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they're just taking your research. It could be anybody. I'm not just picking on them.
Well, I'm not going to rule out, because I want to speak to them tomorrow. But obviously, I've got some interesting UFO footage and things, and I'm doing a few projects. I'm doing one with you. I'm doing one with Chris Turner. And if I kind of run with something, just to be able to say, hey, I'm on Ancient Aliens. What's that going to do for me? I want to do a documentary with you. I want to do one with Chris. I'm not ruling it out. The guy might be watching this now. So I'm not ruling it out. No, you know what I mean? It's not. To some people, it's massive. I want to be on Ancient Aliens. To me, if it happens, it happens. You know what I mean? I genuinely mean, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't,
well, if anybody from Ancient Aliens, Paul will say that he's been approached by other people. And he's asked for assurance that the Truth Proof channel gets mentioned, and it never gets mentioned. Just bear that in mind.
I were going to do something a few months ago. We're not into running people down.
Names, no.
I won't do that, as you know that. One of the biggest channels on internet, on YouTube, absolutely monstrous. And I've got some images, and I wanted the Truth Proof logo on them. And we'd done everything, and that weren't going to happen. So that didn't happen. It would have done our channel amazing. But I'm not selling myself out to nobody. Yeah. No, go on, let's fire away.
Yeah, and let's have a look at Tom Gatlin. I believe in UFOs, but I would need DNA evidence or something cryptid or made of flesh. Not many people would agree with me, but that's just what I think I'd need.
Do you know, Tom, I don't mean I agree with you or disagree with you, but there's a lot of people out there that said they won't believe in the existence of Bigfoot, or should we say werewolf stroke dogman, until there's one laid on a table that they could look at. So you're not on your own, are you? But Tom, what if these things, and I can see that you're in the flesh and blood camp, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but what if these things are something else? Look at what the evidence is telling us. That's what I'd say. And the evidence is telling us that these things have got the ability to somehow speak into our minds in some instances. What animal can do that? And I'm not having a dig at you, Tommy, and I'm just sort of off on my little rant. You know, the movement, the body movement, these things float. What animal can do that? These things can sort of dematerialize as they're walking away. The hunter holds a gun up to one of these things and it suggests something in his mind. He hears a voice advising him not to do it. So, Tom, what if there's something else? Please don't think I'm just moving goalposts, but I don't think that these bipedal, fur-covered creatures are forging an existence in United Kingdom. I really don't think that they're here undetected. And that's not to put a damper on anybody that's given us any incredible reports, because that's what they've been, incredible reports. But I think they're here, but we've just got to accept that it's a different kind of real.
Well, I want to read Tom's question is this, right? He's saying at the beginning, I believe in UFOs.
Yeah.
So the question from us, Tom, is what evidence is laid out then for you to say you believe in the UFOs? It's not a trick question or anything. It's just I'd like to know what evidence you've come across or what you've seen or what confirms it for you.
Yeah, have you actually seen and experienced a UFO up close and personal, or even at distance, that would make you think this is something otherworldly? If you have, and I know it's only a play on words, Tom, but I'd restructure the question. I don't believe in UFOs because I know they're real, because I've seen one. But to just believe in them is kind of blind faith. And I believe that there's something akin to a Bigfoot, the werewolf, the dog man. So is that blind faith? I'm believing in that based on the incredible evidence that we've been given from witnesses. But the descriptions and the way that these things are portrayed and the body movements and what they do just totally takes them away from a flesh and blood creature for me. Great question, Tom. You've got us sort of scratching us heads there, mate.
You got us running
and
around.
Thanks, Alison, for doing moderating tonight. And I got a thumbs up from Alison there. Thank you.
Dogman TP Hunting. And if an official announcement would go a long way in regards to proof.
Yeah, of course it would. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But do we? I agree. But to the people like yourself, Phil, to the people in chat who've actually seen and experienced, then do we need it? Do we? You know what I mean? I suppose I do agree with you there, because if we did get official announcement, all the people that haven't seen and experienced would have to have a major shift in their belief systems. And so yeah, that's right. Yeah, in my opinion, and Phil's.
Okay, well, I can answer this question actually. Tony Worrell, fellas, how are you doing? More ghost stories. I saw the post. That looks like you are about to get run over. Yeah, thanks for that, Tony. Yeah, scheduled ghost stories are running on, I've got it wrote down, 23rd of October and the 30th of October for the first two. So just before the Halloween period and the Halloween.
If you don't get them done, I'm going to do some, Tony. But he's going to do them, yeah. And I can see
they're already made, Paul. They're already made, mate. I
can see a question from Bobby Dazzler there. I don't know whether you can see it, or have you got any more questions? I can read it.
I'm going through my stack.
Right. It's just that I know Amanda and I know this story. Well, don't know it in great detail.
Let me go and find it. I don't know where it is. Don't know how far down it is. I've got.
Just weave through what you've got, Les, and we'll get to it. If we don't, Amanda won't be bothered.
I've got 90. What I ain't even seen. Right. Okay. Let's go back to my list here, which is John Paul Body. I think that maybe the feeling of fear is a precursor to strange events, or when a person is on the outer edge of a massive energy field with EMF.
And do you know, John, the feeling of fear? I mean, it may just be, and I know you've had this experience. It may just be that it's something so out of our comfort zone that we do become frightened, and we maybe don't have to be frightened. That's an easy thing to say, isn't it? When I was frightened to death that night walking back from Danes Dyke, I couldn't think to myself, well, I don't have to be frightened. That's how I felt. But maybe when these things are happening, it just takes us so far out of our comfort zone that that's exactly what we feel. But the precursor to strange event or massive energy field. Yeah, well, I've said it before, John, and you don't have to come on camera, but if you want to come on and share some of these experiences, I'd love you to. I really would. I've spoke to you, and I know after I'd heard what you'd got to share, these people would like to hear it as well.
Okie doke. We've got Dogman, TP Hunting. Paul, do you think the possibility that these UFOs could be just organic?
Why not? Why not? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm no man of science, am I? Let's face it. Everybody's heard me talk, but I don't see why not. I mean, the term ILF, UFO, was kind of coined by myself in 2002. ILF UFO, what name on my website? But I didn't just make it up thinking that sounds like a nice name. It was due to what we were looking at on the wolds, the East Yorkshire wolds, and then we progressed to on the cliff tops of Bempton and Speeton. ILF, intelligent light forms. And I was describing these things as almost being like intelligent light, because we didn't see anything structured in them, but we were at times realizing that when we lifted a camera up, they were literally switching off. And you'd say things like, I bet you when I put camera away, me and Steve Ashbridge something will, and it used to happen. It could all be coincidence, but I mean, we were on cliff tops, myself, Pete, Linny, and we'd got the EMF meter just sat in the grass, and it started to rain. He knows, I'll not go into detail about story because I know that Linny kindly allowed Les and myself to interview him last week, and we're going to put that out at some point, providing he's okay with it. But I said, I'm going to put that away now. It had been sat there for half an hour just with one green light on it. As soon as I spoke, and I'm not near it, we're like 10 to 15 feet away, it just went nuts. It literally just, there's some kind of energy there. Electrical energy. Probably not answering your question here, Phil, but there you go. And then after that, we had an event, or should I say Linny did, I didn't, and Pete didn't, but he did. But then all three of us witnessed something 10 minutes later. Strange. There's so many things you actually think, leave it up that, Les. There's so many things that you actually think, well, there's nothing happening up here. And then when you get it as a collective, if you write it all down and sort of get it all documented, you realize that there's little bits of strangeness occurring. I won't mean every time you go up, but quite often. But yeah, no, I didn't mean leave that up, Les. Apologies. You could have left the other one up. Sorry.
Tom Gatlin, a Great British made UFO movie called Cosmos. I've not seen it.
Cosmos. I haven't seen it, Tom, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, people. Was that Carl Sagan? But I've not seen it.
I'll be looking into that one.
Cosmos. Didn't Benny Hill have somebody called Cosmos?
I think so, yeah.
Cosmos Small Piece or something, weren't it?
David Barker, do you think the rods people were seeing a few years ago were just insects?
Yes. In a word, Dave, yeah, I do. I mean, Les might have a view on this because he likes his cameras and he's got a lot more knowledge on them than me. But I do now after gaining a bit more knowledge about cameras, knowing that when an insect is close to the lens and it flits past it, and you've got this
a long streak,
oval shape. Yeah, I do.
Probably.
Probably.
Even though I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the footage out there with what looks like rods, and the perspective is like maybe half a mile away or what have you?
Yeah,
so might not be what we're looking at, like from ring cameras and things like that. I don't know. There could be something to it. I don't know.
Well, right. While we're on subject of cameras, and Jack, who got the incredible footage from Brazil, and we showed it a few weeks ago. We showed it 2 years prior, I think. He's not been very well, so I hope you're feeling a bit better. Well, he's just had an operation, so I hope you're feeling better, Jack. Yeah, but he sent me today, and I'm not got permission yet to whether we can play this. And so I shall try to see if we can seek permission. So that'd be another Sunday thing. There's loads of things for Sunday, and they'll probably not get through any of them. But he's got something on a Ring doorbell cam.
Oh, you'll be made a list.
It's very interesting. Yeah. And it's a voice. There's nobody there. But and right, go on then, Les.
So I hope you've made a list for Sunday.
Well, I am. You know, it'll just go straight through there and out other side. But there you go.
Okay. Yeah, and if you want to look for that video and some of that footage, it's Jack Hilsey. If you look for Jack Hilsey live stream revisited on the True Proof channel, you'll find some. Yeah,
the Brazilian footage were absolutely brilliant, and Jack filmed that with his wife from their apartment in Brazil, overlooking the forest. I think it was good. I think it was much underrated. So what's this, Ezo? And good to see you here, mate. Go on, Les.
Quest. Paul, was the witch you met a person or something else? That story bothers me because it reminded me of a nightmare I once had.
I don't know. I were only a young boy. I'd have only probably been 13, 14. Oh, 13. And yeah. And I loved it because I think I've told people in chat that I reconnected with a friend from school about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, Adrian Kirby, and he confirmed. I didn't think I'd spoke about it to anybody, but at the time, the boys at school were saying they'd met this woman on the lane near the woods, and her eyes looked black. It was so strange, and she told me to die like poison, which was the strangest thing to say. It's all stuck in my mind. I don't know. Something she sent real. I don't know. It's crazy. And I'm not trying to sell Night People, but you'll have to read Night People if you want to know a little bit more about the story.
Right then, 11,444 subscribers to the channel. Just got to say, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And we'll really, really want to get it to that 12,000 very, very shortly.
Yeah, that would be great. And as Alison always asks you to subscribe, and Les is doing the same. Just remember, if you've not done it, it's absolutely free. All you're doing is just giving us a little bit more support, and it just gives us incentive to sort of keep putting these things out. I mean, I enjoyed that impromptu one that we did other night. You know, just totally off the cuff, and it was just great. Just sort of throw it out there and just get your ideas, get your views, and let's have another question here. Then let's love these questions.
There's a good view from Anarchy X. I don't think everything is linked. I still believe they are separate phenomena, but who knows?
I can go with that. I genuinely think everything's linked, but I'm not forced to be right. And if the separate,
how do you think it's linked? It pretty simply, Paul. How do you
put it simply? Put it right. Well, let's just use the mind speak.
Right.
It's Paul's saying, is it the same kind of exotic science that the clairvoyant, which when he's hearing clairaudience, the voices in his head, is it the same exotic science when the Bigfoot imparts a message to the hunter who's going to shoot it? Is it the same exotic science when the alien abductee is laid there motionless, can't move, and these beings are speaking to him in his mind? So there's the link. That's just one of the links. So, but I'm not saying that you're not right, Anarchy. That's just my view on it. And if it's not linked as regards, they're all these different phenomena, whether knowing or unknowingly, are using the same kind of science from behind the firewall to come through and interact with us. Surely, you know, there are more examples of what I would call the links, but like I said, all I'm just throwing out are my thoughts and my views. And last thing I want to do is say to somebody like you, Anarchy, who's saying I don't believe it's linked, to say no, you're wrong, because you could be right. You know, none of us know it ultimately, do we?
True. And I think Anarchy X is saying Gibson guitars make a very famous electric guitar. Les Paul.
Les Paul, yeah, excellent.
We'll have to be a musical instrument then, won't we?
Yeah, well,
don't know what we're going to be.
I don't know. Do you know something? I've got 4 daughters, and Jessica and Laura can play instruments. Laura can play saxophone, good singer. Jess can pick up any instrument, guitar. She's proficient with piano. She's absolutely brilliant with flute. I don't know where it comes from, the actual music, because I'm just useless.
I'm great, actually. I'm good with triangle and tambourine. That's about
brilliant.
Yeah. So, okie doke. Let's
get down to wheel tappers and shunters.
Right then. What's this one?
Oh, Liam.
TP hunting, Paul. When you're out, do you ever hear a buzz or a hum?
We have done, yeah. And I were in Danes Dyke today, and I didn't hear anything, by the way. But there's a particular bit of woodland where I've heard a loud, high-pitched sound. Picture a shrew, or listen to a shrew, you know, the little mouse, diminutive mouse, and you can hear that sound they make, but it was constant. And we'd heard that. I were with Cleo, granddaughter, and I'd also heard it with Kelly Hollis and Steve Ashbridge. Steve didn't hear it, which is interesting, on cliff tops. And Kelly said, "Can you hear that?" I could hear it, and she's got her hands over her ears, and Steve couldn't hear it, which were really odd. Kelly's the lady who used to be in Emmerdale and Shameless. And then the American guy came up that time, and he'd been to Skinwalker Ranch, he'd been to Hoyabaku Forest, because he's interested in the high strangeness of various areas across the world. And he spent a lot of time around the area of Bempton Cliff Tops, and I know we're tight for time, Les. And as he's walking along between, I think it was between 11:30 and 12:30 at night, and he's on the cliff tops between Bempton and Flamborough, he said, and as he's walking, suddenly this hit his ear. He said, and I stepped back and it stopped. I stepped forward and it started again. I stepped out of it and it stopped. I turned round and it hit that ear. So it was coming from inland, some kind of directional sound. And it didn't frighten him, but it was there. And so to reiterate, he'd been to Skinwalker, he'd been to the Hoyabaku Forest and other places. He'd experienced nothing. And the only thing of strangeness that this guy did experience was on the cliff tops between Bempton and Flamborough. Now it's hardly the mothership or some kind of alien abduction scenario or a cryptid, but it's still interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, and let's have a look. Well, I don't know about you, Paul, but I can go a few minutes, a little bit longer if you want, because we have some good reactions in here, and I don't know if you want to get some more on the screen. Yeah, are you good for that? If you're good,
I might leave you talking. I might go get a beer.
You go and get a beer now. Yeah, you go and get a beer, Paul, now. And, yeah, and don't forget, folks, if you want to actually buy any of the Truth Proof magazines, we have a website that you can go to, so you can buy all the books and the DVD that me and Paul made, Wolflands. If you haven't already got it, you can get it from Amazon Prime. Download it from there for a couple of few quid, and either buy it or rent it if you ain't already seen it. Quite a few people have testified that they quite enjoy it. So, with a bit of self-promotion going on there, folks, I know you've got some great questions in for tonight. And let's have a look. Just bear with us. We'll get this question up for Paul when he comes back in. This one's from Steve T. I saw military vehicles yesterday heading along the road that goes to RAF Stackton from the Oxon roundabout. There was a military tanker also heading that way. Well, as Paul said on the last live stream, there's been military exercises going on, to his knowledge. So I would assume that would be part of the military exercises that they've been going through on the East Coast. But I could be wrong, and Paul might know more about that when he comes back. I don't know if he's took the little dog for a walk, actually. Right. We'll leave that on the screen. If you've got any more questions, just put them in the chat for us. And yeah, it's great reading these out. And thanks for all the support. And thanks, Alison, for doing the moderating. Thumbs up, Alison. Yeah, she's there. There we go. Yeah, great. And I think I can hear him coming back with his.
There we go. Thank
with
you.
His beer. Yeah. So I've just read this question, this out, and I know you talked 2 nights ago about military exercises, Paul, which could be all to do with that. That's what I was suggesting. Have you? Do you agree with that?
So military vehicles. Yeah. Do you know what was it? I think it was Operation Chameleon, which ran from 8th of August, I think, to 28th of this month, or is running. And then we've got Operation Cobra Warrior, which started on the 16th, which is a few days ago. So
that could be it.
That's what I like about people that come onto cliff tops with me, because we observed strange light phenomena out at sea, but we kind of settled on the idea that this is part of the military exercise, even though it were interesting, it were great to see, and we will continue to try and film it. So in answer to your question, or part answer, the vehicles around Staxton and probably other areas, maybe Filingdales as well, they're probably to do with this military exercise, or I don't know. I
would have thought, yeah. I got
Octon roundabout as well.
Yeah.
You saw them at Octon. Interesting. Octon, incidentally, and I will leave that one on, Les. The one you've got on. In Octon is interesting because when we were looking onto the Wolds for the light form phenomena, probably 2004 to 2009, myself and Steve Ashbridge, we found ourselves at Octon quite a lot. Octon is near Sledmere, it's near Cottam, Weaverthorpe, all areas like little villages, and Langtoft that shouldn't have a concentration of UFO reports, but they come in from those areas, and they still do today. Right, go on then. What?
Okay, doke. So we have a question from, not a question so much. Yeah, let's see what somebody's saying.
What was that question? No, you've just gone off the question, Les. The one on there that we hadn't done.
Oh, sorry, we ain't done that one.
Yeah.
Got in front of myself.
Yeah, that's my fault.
Yeah, I feel that we all carry our frequencies, so maybe the phenomena matches to experience it. So our own frequency that we have at that moment in time, Paul.
Yeah, and
maybe that's why we're receptive to it.
Yeah, and I think in some ways you could be right, because maybe we don't look upon it as a frequency, Big Bird, but when we go into a situation with a certain mindset, obviously we're giving off that vibe, aren't we? Usually that's what happens. You jump away from unexplained phenomena. If you go out into a bar years ago, if I went out with a group of people and there were going to be trouble, you went out with that vibe, and that's the vibe you were giving off. And maybe that's no different to when you go into these areas, and if you go in sort of full of energy and full of expectancy, then you will see something. Maybe you can get a little bit too complacent in these areas as well at times. I don't know, but I think you're right.
Tommy Gunn was on a mountain climb, got to the plateau, there was a waterfall and a large pond. Then this woman came forward, smiled, went past me, and then she vanished. That's a great
amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
I like that one.
Yeah. I've seen you commenting actually on the comments, Tommy, and it's great. Is that account? I mean, you probably just summed it up in 2 lines, but it'd be great to hear a little bit more detail about that from you. It's really interesting. And where were you? Obviously, were you in the UK, America? Is it an area that's known for strange phenomena? Did this one change your views on the unexplained? Is that why you're listening to this now? I don't know. It's fascinating. Yeah. Alison, are you still okay for time?
Are you all right, Alison?
Just all right. Well, you just close it down when you want, Alison. You don't feel obliged. You know what I mean? Just
yeah.
Thank you.
If you need to go to bed, yeah.
Well, no, she's just been working hard all day, but
I know, that's what I mean. Yeah, she wants to go. John Paul Body. Paul, I'm planning a few visits to Danes Dyke early October to experience the old stomping grounds. Hopefully, might be able to arrange a meet.
I hope so. Yeah, I'd really hope so. But because this guy who's just put the question up, John, when you think there might be a catalyst for something to happen, it's someone like that you need to take with you. And just like a broken record, Paul cites Lee Haywood. We saw that sphere of light in that field, and I truly believe it was because Lee was there, and I think certain people do, I wouldn't say evoke, but do take the right energy in, just like the previous question has suggested, and you can get some kind of result with it. So let's meet up.
And that full account is in the Wolflands DVD. Paul.
Yeah. If you want to, like Les has just said, if you want to hear what myself and Lee Haywood saw and experienced, because that weren't a story that were being told to me first-hand account, it were a first-hand account from myself, because that huge glowing orb was in the field with us, and as fast as I was putting camera around it, just imploded and gone.
No, this one's a good one from Tom DeRose. When I went on the cliffs, I noticed the stands were made by a company with demon in their email address. What do you think about that, Paul? I'm probably overthinking this one.
I've not noticed, Tom.
Yeah, there was a demon mailing company, wasn't there, at one point?
Right. Okay.
Email.
Yeah. So no, I'd not noticed, and
overthinking maybe. I would have thought, Tom.
Well, I don't know. Did you experience out, Tom? And or did you just have a cold night on the cliff tops, which is basically what we do most of the time?
Dogman TP, true proof.
Thank you, Phil.
Guys. Yeah,
it was great having you on a few weeks ago, and I'm sure we'll have you back if you want to come back on, because it's interesting listening to you share your views.
I think we've got in the mountains in New Hampshire. Was Tommy Gunn.
Thank you. Brilliant story, which you summed up in 2 lines, which has probably got us all interested.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Dean Cooling. It's the sounds turning off that concerns me the most. That's something I've never experienced.
Yeah, well, I think I know. Well, you said the sounds turning off. Yes, I know what you're talking about. The lower silence. Yeah, that's strange, Dean, isn't it? When a person, that's the altered environment almost that these people are put in. And a lot of time the fear comes with that, Dean. So probably that's why it would concern you the most, because of the descriptions people have come up with when they've said suddenly all the crickets stop making a noise. And I wonder if it's the crickets that have stopped making a noise. I wonder if it's the river that stopped running, or the stream, or whether we've just been placed in a totally different environment. We're still there, but there's some kind of a bubble of strangeness that's just been placed over us for us not to perceive anything that's happening. Because surely this, right, we'll use the Wolflands Gaz from Scalby Mills as an example. When we made Wolflands, he went up to do some star watching. Not anyone that were interested in cryptids, not interested in UFOs. He was interested in the aurora and looking at the sky. So he's at the side of the sea. He's looking over into what's called Jackson's Bay, close to Scarborough, and he can hear the sea. And he says, and then suddenly, like a switch, everything changed. He said, and I suddenly started to feel apprehensive, and I heard something coming towards me, heavy footfall. But my point here is we aren't going into Gaza's story too deep. Surely it's not got the ability to stop the sea. So there's something else happening. It's an environmental change that's just enveloping the person, the person who's experiencing this, rather than it being able to stop all crickets in the immediate area making their noise, or the stream running. That's where I'm coming from with it, Dean. I know that we've jumped away from what you're saying, but yeah, it is a concern, surely, because you know something's going to happen.
I mean, it could be akin. I could be talking silly here, or out my ass. I don't know, but it could be akin. You know when you get you want to blow you blow your nose and you sometimes get blocked ears and you can't hear certain frequencies. You know when you get blocked ears, you can't hear our frequencies and things like that. So maybe it's obviously a frequency thing that's not permeating into the brain. I don't know.
Who can say, Les? I just
pretty
don't
loose
know.
with that one. I probably people could put more onto that than what I've just said.
Well, there's definitely something happening, isn't there? The individual concerned is experiencing, and their experiences of the external forces around them, they're saying everything's shut down. And I don't think it is myself. I think it's something that's targeting the individual. He said he heard these footsteps coming towards him. He says, I knew it was heavy, something like a bull or a heavy horse, which is impossible. He's in the darkness on the edge of a steep cliff. He says, and I dropped into the fetal position. Now, if you want to know about that, watch Wolflands. He says, I dropped into the fetal position.
I'll watch that one.
And because I thought I were going to get whacked. His exact words, whacked. He says, just as I thought it were going to impact me, everything just snapped back to normal. It's almost a trickster element that we're dealing with, isn't it? You know?
Okay, just picking up from what I was discussing earlier. Tina says, bang on, Les, disclosure wrapped in ridicule. It makes a strange kind of sense. Yeah, I think you're on
disclosure wrapped in ridicule.
Tina,
or is it the suppression of disclosure wrapped in ridicule? You know, I don't know, Tino. You know, but we get these all. You know, the newspapers. As we've said, and you open the paper and you see a UFO story, and the narrative that they put on it is that.
Hi, Alison. Alison's going.
Oh, I'll see you, Alison. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Alison, for helping us tonight, and we'll catch you Sunday. Take care. Thank you.
She's off to sleep.
Brilliant. Kind of, go on, Les.
Sorry, you had more to say on that. Sorry, Paul.
Well, no, I mean the disclosure. I'm just not sure, because we know that for the most part, I mean, things might be changing slightly, especially with the big cat phenomenon. I think people accept that they're here, but we know that when you offer a story up to the press, you actually think that you come away thinking that you've been dealt, or you're going to get dealt with in a favourable light, and then when you actually read it, you've been made to look like a tit. That's basically, I'm sorry for saying it like that, but that's basically what happens. That's why I'd literally turn loads and loads of this stuff down. Absolutely loads. As I said, the sort of social media woman, she came to me first, and I just turned it down. Loads and loads of people, and TV channels have approached, and I just know where it's going to lead.
That's right, because I think one year you was telling me you had the local BBC wanted to do a show.
Yeah.
And I think I probably said, I think I know where this is going to go when they deliver it on the TV, Paul.
Yeah. But, and and there's other things. I mean, it's hard to say these things and not sound like you're trying to, but have a dig. But it's the truth. There's other places such as, well, TV channels and like I'll not set names of them, but they've come to me and I've sat down and I've given them loads and loads of information, and then they've ran with Rudston Monolith in his one in part. I sat down and give them all information, and then other people ran with it. Do you know what I mean? So it puts me off. But anyway, we're not supposed to be negative, are we? So let's just have another couple of questions, Les, and then we'll see where we're going. Right
then, Tina just follows on with that, saying the phenomenon itself can be mocking at times, let's face it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way, Tino, you know, the cults that have sprung up over the years and allegedly in contact with aliens and other beings from other places, and they've absolutely invested all their life into it and proclaimed from the rooftops that this or that is going to happen, and it doesn't happen. So they're being lied to on a monumental scale. That's the mocking in a way as well, isn't it? You know, and just like I'm talking about what I believe, what I think, I could be 100% wrong. I could be just being led down a totally different road deliberately. Because let's face it, none of this phenomena seems to want us to get a hold of what's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, or maybe we do. Maybe turn it on its head. Maybe we do have a hold, but we don't know how to express it, Paul.
Could be, or just when we start to get close to it,
yeah,
something else happens. Like I said earlier, you know, just when you think you've got a little bit of a handle on what's happening, something else happens that sends you down another dark passage, and maybe all this is deliberate. It's all ifs and maybes, isn't it? You know, I mean. I say we're a skeptic's dream scenario because we've got proof of nothing, and we haven't.
Just thoughts from William Nielsen here. Some people have open minds, some people have closed minds, and found it hard to believe in anything.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, just like the question came up earlier, or somebody said, I'm not expecting to find it, Les, but they said they'd seen something, but they don't believe in it. How can you do that? How can you actually see and experience something, but I don't believe in it? You know, that's crazy.
Dean Cooling, I think part of the problem
I'm off. See you, Lee.
I think part of the problem is there is a huge amount of UFO footage, etc. However, I've yet to see a video of a dog man.
Yeah,
but I'm also a knower.
Yeah, so, you are because you've had that experience, mate. You know, and
that's a good point. I ain't really thought about that, Paul.
No, well, there's not much out there, is there? Cryptid related, these things. I don't know. They're ultra elusive, but Dean's saying is a knower because he's experienced it. Yeah. You know, after you'd been on, Dean, somebody contacted me and said they thought you'd seen a Kangol. The huge sort of beige-coloured dog that they use in Afghanistan, I think, and other places. Real fearsome dog. And I'm not saying you did, Dean. I'm absolutely 100% certain you didn't. You'd have known if it were a Kangol. It moved your car and it moved around like a serpent. But anybody that's not heard Dean Cooling describe what he saw many years ago, on in his wing mirror of his car when he sat in it, then you need to get back into one of these truth-proof videos and find where we're talking to Dean. So, yeah, you're a knower. Great guy, by the way, Dean Cooling.
Debbie Shaw, if you're still with us, Debbie, your question is, your statement is, disclosure suggests we are waiting for someone else to tell us what's real. Disclosure has already happened if we choose to believe.
Yeah, I would agree. And I kind of touched around that earlier, Deb, when I said, well, why would we need the government to tell us? I could, in a way, if an official body did start coming out and saying some of this was real, it would stop the ridicule. Maybe. But having said that, do we believe anything that the governments of the world tell us? But if they started to tell us it were real, it would, in a way, it would help suppress the ridicule. But Deb doesn't need anybody to tell her it's real. Paul doesn't. Les doesn't. That's a good on that list of names in here. Most of you guys don't, because you've had your own experiences. So it's hard to know what we need. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Which starts off from your original question after Ron had left. What is proof? What would be sufficient proof for people in the existence of the alien phenomena, the Bigfoot phenomena? And it's different for everybody. And I suppose we've still got 169 people sat in here, and it'll be probably different. We can all agree and disagree to some degree. That was nice, weren't it?
That was poetic, that, Paul. Nickname, not wasting time convincing people. If they have a natural interest or experience, they will find their way. Not convincing anyone, no time. That's for that is there. Yeah.
Find your people. Yeah, like attracts like, Nick, and you're absolutely right. And, if you don't need to believe if you've already experienced, because you know. We're going to wind this down in a few minutes, Les.
Got a few more. I'll go through what I've got on my list, and then we'll have to wind down. Else we'll be falling asleep, Paul. Right then, see if I can get Bobby Dazzler. I heard Bigfoot talk down the track to us, but my recording did not pick it up. But it picked up a male voice whispering, "You walk here." But I didn't hear that with my ears. Weird. So the recording picked that up, but Bobby Dazzler didn't hear it.
Yeah, and Bobby Dazzler is Amanda who's been on cliff tops loads of times with us, and full credit to her. She wanted to go to a place where people experienced the Bigfoot phenomena and went to America and did just that, and slept outside in one of these cots, with a group of other people, and you did experience some kind of strange phenomena and light form phenomena in the trees. And once again, Amanda came on Truth Proof. I don't know, Les, can you remember? Probably 2 years ago.
A long while ago, yeah.
So if you want to scroll through, you can hear what Bobby Dazzler, as in Amanda, saw and experienced while she was on that Bigfoot expedition a few years ago.
July the 15th, 2021, she came on the stream.
2021. So, and we really appreciate that. And absolutely always brilliant to spend time up there with Amanda, because such an open-minded person. And not I believe anything, but I'm open-minded enough to let's keep searching for these things. And that's all you can do.
And Debbie Shaw is kind of echoing what you've been saying, Paul. The hardest thing to accept with the whole of this subject is the fact that some questions will never be answered.
Yeah, I think that. Do you know something, Deb? I think that absolutely sums it up. And it's difficult for some people. It's difficult for the ones. And you've been to conferences, and a lot of people in chat will have been to some of these conferences. And you've got people who stand there and they tell you it's written in stone that this is how it is. And I'm never rude to them, but I just switch off because I don't know.
Amanda follows up that. She's replying to nickname. All right, yeah, she's saying I had a very loud, deep male voice giving an instruction or telling me off in a language I did not understand. Very, very loud, but no one else heard it, and it didn't record, but I heard it.
Yeah, and I can believe that, and it's in that interesting that you couldn't understand the language, but you perceived you were being told off. Or giving an instruction or telling off, but you maybe not telling you off, but whatever this language was, whoever this person with the unintelligible language, he was, whatever he was conveying, he was telling somebody off or telling you off. I think it was somebody else. I think you said it sounded like an argument. I remember now, but nobody else heard it. It's fascinating. Remember on the cliff tops Monday night, I'm there. Pete's, let's get it right. Pete's there, and a voice said, "Paul." It were nobody with us, and I weren't going to say anything. And Pete just went, "Did thou just hear that?" And he said, "Thou." So I haven't just said it for any other reason. He'll be laughing when he hears me say it, because he pulled me up on it other night when I did it, and he said it said the name, and it did. Whatever it was, there when somebody said Paul. Crazy.
Okay, John Honsley, do you remember a TV documentary early in 2000s called A Very British UFO Hoax? It was very good. Before drones, they created a giant flying disc and flew it over a pub.
I don't, John. No.
I didn't see that one. No, that looks interesting. But that's all we need, isn't it? Another hoax, Paul.
Yeah, a giant UFO flying over a pub. Probably it's about 11:30, and you're going to get a lot of people
That's when they flew it, yeah.
Just seeing a UFO.
Chucking out the pub, yeah. And do you know what I think?
And Martin Aber says, sounds like Pete. Yeah, it does. Yorkshire Grey, good to see you. Welsh Wen, one sec, Jojo, Fred Flintstone, we've done them all, but 172, it's such a great having support, guys. Thank you.
Liam,
and Liam, good to see you, mate. And Liam and Les, we met you at the Awakening, and so did Les.
Yeah,
this is the photographer from Awakening, Les.
It is, yeah, I remember him. Yeah, have you any new print or digital projects in the pipeline, Paul? Any new books?
Yeah, I'm working on the sub-universe, the submerged universe. Obviously, aquatic UFOs, USOs, for as they're known. So I've been working on that, but I showed Les earlier today when we spoke for about I don't know, 20 minutes earlier today, and we were on about shorts and things, and the fact that I'm just not getting time to put them out. And I showed him just one folder with a list of just accounts that I've just collecting and writing Word documents up for. So the scope for loads more books, but I think I've got to just get my head into the sub-universe and the documentary I'm doing with Les and the one I'm doing with Chris Turner. Thank you. And great to see you here, Liam. Thank you.
Okay. We ain't paid Dean Cullen to write this, folks, but we'll put that on. Nothing to do with being friends with him, but I really do believe True Proof is the best and genuine channel on YouTube, bar none. 100% essential viewing. Well, thank you, Dean.
Thank you. Thanks, Dean. Really kind of you to say. And there'll be a tenner in post tomorrow. No, cheers, mate. Appreciate it.
Usually a £5 wheel, Paul. It's
you're a print other £5. Hey, you owe me a £5 as well, if you remember. You had me a bet other days we walked along cliff tops.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right, Dean. I think this is Dean calling again. Paul, have you seen or received any more regarding the eyes animal on the cliffs by rock anglers, etc.?
No, it does make sense, but no, I haven't, Dean. No, and we've all made note that even Mark, who saw the light in the sky earlier in the week, the guy who does a lot of he goes shooting all over the place, all legally, but we've all noted that there's no eyes, there's nothing, not even rabbits that we used to see lots of, and deer we're not seeing as much. But there you go.
Okay, so let's have a look.
Les is playing this because I know he wants to go to 9:30. I've just sussed now.
9:30? No, not
yeah.
Really.
Well,
let's have a look. What's this one? Lee Roscoe, the guy on the train with a cube. Has he had any paranormal happen before or after?
Not that I know of, Lee. Not that I know of. And I think I talked about it briefly one Sunday, so it might be one to do again. I mean, I like to get a collection of these similar stories to this. He said it had lines down this cube, and it were almost transparent, and he could see it in the woodland. And we'll redo that one. And anybody that's got any stories that of the unexplained that don't quite fit the norm. I mean, what fits the norm with the unexplained? We know that when we talk about UFOs, we know the apparitions of hooded beings. That's all. That's all kind of part of the norm. But the cubes, it's fascinating, isn't it? Mm. You know, it's just outside of what. Even if the unexplained anything within it could be described as normal, the cube is outside of that, to me.
Okay, then this is the final one. Then I guess William Nielsen, Paul. So you're many years ago on the original program. Do you still keep in touch with him? And has he been a guest on your show before? If not, could he be in the future?
Richard could be. Yeah, we had a doubt, and I did keep in touch with him up until about 2 or 3 years ago. Nothing untoward. Like I've loads of time for the guy, but no, it's just one of them things. You just drift apart and go in different directions. Richard kindly came through to speak to an old farmer at Staxton Wold, who I still maintain has probably got more UFO footage than anybody I know. This is the guy with the cameras on cams, 24/7 sweeping and just collecting data and looking for things in all the upstairs windows of his home. And I got to know the guy, and I used to visit him quite often. And he contacted Richard D. Hall. Nothing to do with me, by the way. He contacted him independently. But when Richard came to spend 3 or 4 days in area and document what he'd seen, he backed out. He wouldn't do it. Mm. So the farmer said, "Will you speak to him?" So I did, and we did a little bit of a. I think Richard did a little bit of a not a documentary as such. He interviewed me and put it out. Probably, I can't remember how long it is, Les. Is it 30 minutes, 45 minutes? It's out there on YouTube.
Yeah.
That I did. And everything that I'm talking about that day, if anybody's seen that one of me and Richard when it was Rich Planet TV, it's literally totally off the cuff. I just drove in my works van from Danesdyke, where I was walking my dog, and met him, and we did it. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, it should still be on his Rich Planet TV page if you look for it.
Well, maybe, if it's still there.
And that's it. I think we are done. Thanks, Tino, for the monetary donations tonight, and everybody who's come onto the stream. Absolutely brilliant. I've loved it.
Yeah, and let's have some questions for Sunday, please. I'll tell you what, something I'm interested in. Let's just throw it in.
What we're doing Sunday? What we're putting in there on Sunday, so people might have an idea of what we're talking about.
Well, why would aliens want to contact us? It's not as daft as it sounds. Why would they want to contact us? Okay. And why would we think that we're so special that we're in contact with them? We'll have your views and just chuck a few questions at us for Sunday, because I'm thinking to myself, if these things have evolved, we're almost doing it now for Sunday, but we're not gonna. But if these things have evolved, not 100, not
Sunday, save it for Sunday.
But just briefly, just so you know my thoughts on it, not 100, not 1,000, but thousands of years in advance of us, then they wouldn't dare impart any knowledge to us. Would we impart knowledge to a primate? A chimpanzee, it wouldn't understand it. So that's where I'm going with it. So just throw that one out. And also, anybody got any views? And I'm not on about horror films, but on vampires.
No.
Just throw it out there. And if you haven't, cut it dead.
I'll just throw one little caveat in there, or spanner in the works, however you want to say it. We train dogs, Paul. We train dogs, or even any other animals when we had circuses on a go, and so that's where we want to sort of like impart what we know onto these animals, what don't naturally do it. Just a thought.
Well, yeah, but they're just following commands, and they're not actually. They're learning to do simple tasks. What we're talking about, if with an alien race or another intelligence that's potentially thousands of years in advance of us, if not even more. They're not going. They wouldn't. I don't think they would dare. The gap between the knowing and the unknowing is immeasurable. They wouldn't impart that knowledge on us.
No, well, that's good. That's good. Food for thought. And as Paul said, if you've got any views on that, get them ready for Sunday.
Okay, then.
On that note,
thank you.
There we go. Thanks, Alison, who was long departed us. We wore her out, it seems, and it's worn us out now, Paul. So.
Yeah, William says keep going. Thanks, William. But we're going to close down now, mate, and we'll catch you soon. If you haven't subscribed, please think about doing it, and enjoy your weekend.
Okay.